Hi, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Are we running? We're going. Okay, thank you. I'm Dr. Christine Whitlisbach on the board. I'm the chair of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. Today is March 5th, 2014. We are at the Department of Consumer Affairs in the first floor hearing room. And I am going to call the meeting to order and ask Christina to do a roll call to establish a quorum.
Good morning. Dr. Christine Whitlisbach.
Here.
Christina Wong.
Here.
Samara Ashley. Dr. Leah Brew.
Here.
Deborah Brown. Dr. Peter Chu.
Here.
Betty Conley.
Here.
Dr. Harry Douglas. Here. Sarita Kohli.
Here.
Patricia Locke Dawson. Here. Renee Launer. Karen Pines.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay, I am going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to our judge.
Okay, thank you. The first matter, at least on my agenda, is the petition for reinstatement of license for Mimi Shevitz, and I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. Is that close? Okay, and Mr. Hart, you're representing Ms. Shevitz? Okay. And Ms. Jansen, I'll get your appearance when we go on the record, okay? Thank you.
Just want to remind everyone that we are being telecast and we need to speak into the microphones and speak loudly. We've had trouble with that in the past for people hearing us. And if you're not, we'll remind you.
Okay, let's go on the record then. This is a petition, as I mentioned while we were off the record, for reinstatement of a license by Mimi Shevitz. This is Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2014-010926. Let me ask you, Ms. Jansen, is this other number I have, MF-2010-642, is that a case number, the board's case number, or is that meaningful to you?
Yes, I believe that is the board's case number.
Okay, thank you. My name is Carl Engelman, Administrative Law Judge assigned to hear this matter, and we are convened in Sacramento, California on March 5, 2014. And I'm going to ask, even though there's been a roll call prior to the time we went on the record, I'm going to ask the board members once again, if you would, to identify yourselves for the record.
Samara Ashley, public member.
Patricia Locke Dawson, public member.
Dr. Leah Brew, LPCC member.
Renee Launer, LCSW member.
Dr. Christine Whitlisbach, public member and chair.
Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Harry Douglas, public member.
Deborah Brown, public member.
Betty Conley, LEP member.
Sarita Kohli, LMFT member.
Karen Pines, LMFT member.
Peter Chu, public member.
Okay, thank you. And then, Ms. Jansen, would you identify yourself and your capacity this morning, please, for the record?
Thank you. My name is Christina Jansen. I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 and Business and Professions Code Section 4990.30. My role here is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. I will assist the board in fact-finding, and that my purpose is to ensure the board has adequate information from which to make a decision on this petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, would you state your appearance, please?
Richard Hart, H-A-R, presenting the petitioner.
Yeah, I can hardly hear you. Is your mic on? It is? Okay.
So I have a somewhat of a soft voice. Okay. It's come to me with age, but I'll do my best to speak up, sir.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, if you get closer.
Okay, great. That's better than that.
Okay, and seated to your right is Mimi Shevitz. She's the petitioner in this matter, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I believe, and please let me ask the board president to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what the board or the board's protocol today will be to ask Ms. Jensen to offer as an exhibit the petition-related documents in the case and to provide a brief background description to board members. That will be followed by your presentation, Mr. Hart. And as I understand it, It's up to me whether the petitioner will be sworn when she testifies. That's the practice followed by other boards, so I think we'll follow that practice today. So Ms. Shevitz may, if she wishes, offer a statement to the board members today. That will be followed by any questions that Ms. Jansen has of the petitioner, and that in turn will be followed by questions by board members. All right? Is that all right? Yes. Okay. With that, Ms. Jansen.
Thank you. This petitioner was originally issued a marriage and family therapist license on January 12, 1990. In 2010, the board received information that petitioner may be experiencing mental health issues and began an investigation. This led to an order compelling psychiatric evaluation, which was filed and served via first class and certified mail with return receipt requested on petitioner on July 25, 2011. Petitioner failed to respond or comply with this order. An accusation was therefore filed on September 28, 2011. Petitioner was served with this accusation on October 3, 2011, again by first class and certified mail. Petitioner failed to file a notice of defense, and her license was therefore revoked by default decision on January 5, 2012. Service of the order, the accusation, and the default were proper pursuant to the government code. All were mailed to petitioner's address of record via regular and first-class mail. The board also sent her a letter informing her of the order and how to comply. The certified mail copies of all of these documents were returned unclaimed, but the first-class mail copies were not returned. Petitioner asserts that she never received any of these documents due to a flood at her home, which caused her to vacate her residence for some time. Respondent does admit fault in that she failed to provide updated contact information to the board within 30 days as required by California Code of Regulations, Section 1804. In the packet before you, you have attachments. I would like at this time to identify these attachments and submit them into evidence. The first attachment behind tab 1 is the petition for reinstatement. This was submitted by the petitioner. It includes 2 pages of explanation, a 2-page forensic psychiatric evaluation of the petitioner by Dr. Mark Levy, and 5 recommendation letters. I'd like to have this marked as Exhibit 1 and entered into evidence.
Okay. Any objection, Mr. Hart?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Received as 1.
Thank you. Attachment 2 is the default decision and order, the accusation, and the order to compel psychiatric evaluation. I request this be submitted into evidence.
No objection.
No objection. All right. You going to have any objection to any of these exhibits, Mr. Hart? Okay. Please continue.
Thank you. Attachment 3 is the letter that was served on petitioner along with the order to compel psychiatric evaluation. Request to submit.
No objection.
Attachment 4.
I'm going to allow you to describe each one of these, but given what I heard from Mr. Hart, they'll all be received in evidence. But please continue.
I'll just go right through them.
All right.
Attachment 4 is the notice of hearing that brought us here today. Attachment 5 is the license history certification for petitioner. Attachment 6 is the declaration of service for the accusation and the accusation packet. Attachment 7 is the declaration of service for the final decision, the default decision and order. And Exhibit 8 is the declaration of service for the order compelling psychiatric evaluation. Submit all.
Okay. All received in evidence.
Thank you. And petitioner will now address the board.
Okay. Then, Mr. Hart, do you wish to have Ms. Shevitz address the board this morning?
Yes, I do, and my plan was to make about a 1-minute client through a brief direct, because probably take about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then open it up for cross-examination by counsel and any questions that the board may have.
Okay.
I
had a little bit difficulty hearing you, but I think what you said was you're going to make some introductory comments, and then Ms. Shevitz is going to testify. Is that right?
And be sworn.
All right. Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a pretty unusual case. in that the 3-year disqualification that Ms. Shevitz received is typically, as you probably are aware, the type of thing that results when someone refuses to take an examination, and I think the case law supports that. And Mimi Shevitz did not, in any respect, refuse to participate. She never got the notices. Her house was ravished by flood. She was out of the house for at least a year or two. I'm not sure the exact number of months. And so she tried. She had a friend who would go by and pick up mail, and she would go and buy and pick up mail sometimes. But she didn't really think that that wasn't her house. She was living in little temporary quarters in some hotels that the insurance company was paying for while they did a ton of work that had to be done on the house. So she still felt that was her address. In retrospect, it may have been that she should have kept the board better informed about where she was month by month so that this wouldn't have happened, because as she'll tell you herself, she would have happily submitted to an examination. Her license is her life. She practiced for 20 years, and she didn't learn about it, that her license had been suspended or revoked, until after the order, the final order, was issued. So with that, before this hearing, I wanted to know what a psychiatrist would say about whether Mimi Shevitz was fit to practice. And so I found, and with Mimi's help, probably the most distinguished psychiatrist that we could find. And his assignment was to do an assessment, of her fitness to practice right now. And I don't want, you can check him out. He's not the type of man who you can pay for his testimony anyway. And I did not want that, because I'm in a lawsuit. We're suing Ms. Shevitz's former counsel for malpractice and for slander. And I wanted to make sure that the emotional distress that she suffered was something that some trained psychiatrist would, in fact, agree with. And I wanted a fitness letter. He said that the 2 pages was typical. That was the standard. That's what he usually did. If more information is necessary, then certainly we'll endeavor to provide the board whatever it is they wish. At this point, I'd like to then turn it over to Mimi Shevitz. Before I do that, I want to thank particularly Diane Dobbs and Julie McAuliffe, I hope I have that name pronounced right, for permitting us to come before the board in this situation and make this presentation. And I want to thank the board for their time for us to make this presentation, because this is so important for Mimi. This is all she's ever done, and I think she's pretty good at it, so thank you. In other words, the staff was great. Okay? So at this point, if you would like to swear Mimi, Your Honor,
okay.
I'll ask
Ms.
her a few
Shevitz, I'm going to
questions.
ask you to stand, please, and raise your right hand to be sworn, please. Solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you shall give in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Seated. And would you please state your name for the record?
I want to get close to the mic.
Okay.
Mimi Shevitz.
Okay. Mr. Hart, are you going to address questions of Ms. Shevitz?
If that's okay with the court.
Yes.
Okay. Mimi, why are you here today?
To get my license back.
When did you stop practicing?
Around 2008, 2009, in that
And you-
area.
Excuse me. And you started when did you start practicing?
In 1990.
Why did you stop practicing in 2008?
My house was devastated by 2 complete, utter floods.
And what relevance did that have to your practice, if any?
I practiced out of my home, always have.
Okay. So you stopped primarily because You didn't have an office?
It was a health hazard to bring people in. It was a health hazard to bring people into the house.
And what did you do with respect to your clients at that time?
Many of whom were like getting towards the end of their therapy time. So basically therapy was coming to a close, an appropriate closure. Okay. And then the others had psychiatrists as well. So basically they were referred out. Those that had insurance, they went to their insurance company and got referrals, or I helped them.
So you made the decision yourself to stop practicing for those reasons. Is that true?
Yes.
And at some time in mid-2010, did you make a decision to try to retain an active license?
Absolutely.
What did you do in that regard, Mimi?
I thought I hired Steve Frankel as an attorney.
Had you worked with him before on any matters?
Yes, for several years. He had helped me with different kinds of issues.
What types of issues, for example?
Legal issues related to the practice, specifically, that kind of a thing. He's
Okay.
also a psychologist, so you understand.
Okay, so did you actually go into his office, or did you actually sign a retainer with him sometime in mid-2010 to assist you in regaining your active license?
Yes, I did.
And why were you concerned? Why did you think you needed a lawyer to help you do that?
I just thought it was the best thing to do. I don't have a better response.
Okay. Did you attend a association convention approximately 5 years ago in 2009, the end of 2009?
Yes, I did.
And were there problems at that convention?
Yes.
Could you just briefly describe your recollection of what happened?
I felt that one of the presenters had plagiarized Carl Rogers and not given him credit. And when I brought that up to the members of the association that signed people in and out, they became very upset. And I have a background in technology as well. So when one of the courses was on the web, and they didn't understand the difference between the internet and the deep web. So I did it to help them improve their presenters.
And so you spoke out about it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you subsequently learn that a complaint had been made against you based upon your behavior at the conference?
Yes, I did.
And did you talk to your counsel about that?
I mentioned that there had been a problem at the conference.
And what did he tell you?
Not to worry about it.
Okay. And so did you at some point learn that your license had been revoked?
Yes, I did.
And when was that, Mimi?
Early 2012.
Before that, you absolutely had no knowledge that your license had been revoked?
None at all.
And what were you doing to try to get ready for your practice, resuming?
I was still trying to address some of the issues with the house.
Any continuing education, or?
Yeah, I was definitely looking into doing that as well.
Have you done that now?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And where was it? How did you hear that your license had been revoked for the first time?
Steve Frankel gave the paperwork to a friend of mine, who in turn handed that paperwork to me, which was an incomplete group of papers. So.
Okay. And did you know what the reason for the revocation of your license was at that time?
No, I didn't.
No idea.
No idea whatsoever.
Steve had never talked to you about that?
No.
And you totally relied on him?
Yes, I did. He was an executor of my will as well, so I trusted him.
Okay. And so what did you do after you learned that your license had been revoked?
I tried multiple times to get a hold of Steve. I didn't feel that I was getting anywhere, and I hired a new attorney.
That me?
Yes, it was.
And at the time you hired me, did you know what had happened, why your license had been revoked?
No, I didn't.
Was it information that the department provided to me in response to subpoenas that permitted me to explain to you what had happened?
Yes, that's correct.
Are you aware that Steve Frankel said certain things to you to a state investigator in mid-2010?
Not at the time, but in 2012 I became aware. No, 2013, sorry.
Okay. Thank you. So you became aware of that from me?
Yes.
Okay. And were you undergoing treatment for any psychiatric disorder in 2010?
Absolutely not.
When did your father pass away?
2004?
So if Mr. Frankel said it was 2009, he was mistaken?
Yes.
Did you believe that you were ready to practice your profession again in 2010?
That's correct. Yes.
Why do you want your license back, Mimi?
Part of my identity is part of who I am. It's important.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Okay, Ms. Jansen, your questions.
Thank you. Ms. Shevitz, are you aware of California Code of Regulations, Section 1804? It requires you to change your address with the board within 30 days?
I didn't know, as far as I was concerned, my address was still current.
Were you still receiving mail at your home address?
Yes.
So if you received a letter via first-class mail, you would have eventually gained possession of that letter. Is that correct?
Yeah. Things came to me sometimes in bulk. I didn't have a locked mailbox. I never have, so it's possible it could have gotten lost. That's possible. But also a friend of mine was also handling some of my financial affairs, and he had been my secretary for quite a while, for years actually. So I was not made aware of the letter.
And the board had actually sent you 3 separate letters, and you never received any of them.
I never saw any of it.
Have you ever been to the board's website?
I tried once.
So are you aware that you can check your license status online?
No, I actually wasn't.
When in 2008 did your home become damaged? Do you recall the month?
There were 2 significant floods.
Which months?
June and I think August, September.
And did your license become inactive at some point after those floods?
Yes, it did.
And it expired, right? You didn't renew it?
Yes, it's true.
Okay. And then you did renew that inactive license in October of 2012, correct?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm a little confused.
After the flood, your license became inactive, right?
I didn't know that it ever had become reactivated. In fact, I think my attorney brought that up, and we were both confused about that.
So you were not aware that your license was renewed in October of 2010?
No, no. And Steve Frankel never informed me.
Are you referring to her active license or inactive license?
Or the records of the board indicate that her license became inactive prior to October 2010 and was reactivated in October of 2010. It's the same license.
We never knew. I didn't know about that until my current counsel told me. I didn't know.
Now, you stated that you hired Mr. Frankel in June of 2010?
I think the retainer agreement is signed July 2010. But you had working with him off and on. But He was hired specifically according to the retainer agreement, but I think was in our packet that was provided to you in July of 2010 to assist her with her application or her licensing renewal.
Why did you think you needed an attorney to assist you with renewing your license?
Because my life had been torn into chaos, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. It might be a better way to respond to that.
You'd been licensed since 1990, correct?
That's correct.
So you'd renewed your license on your own multiple times prior to 2010.
Yeah, he was also supposed to assist me with getting a provider identification number, which he also failed to do. So it was sort of a package deal from my perspective.
And you had retained him before you learned of the complaint that arose from this continuing education seminar?
Yes, that's true.
So then in 2012, you became unhappy with Mr. Frankel and you contacted Mr. Hart, your current counsel. Is that correct?
That's true.
But in those 2 years, between 2010 and 2012, did you ever yourself contact the board?
No, I didn't. I thought that my attorney Steve would do that at that time. After numerous requests by me, by the way, for him to follow up with anything that needed to be taken care of.
Are you willing today, if requested, to take another psychological evaluation?
Absolutely.
I have no further questions.
Okay, before the board members ask their questions, Ms. Shevitz, anything else you want to say?
Nothing that comes to mind right now.
Okay, so now board members will ask questions of you, and we're going to start on this end, please.
Sure, thanks. I think one of my questions has already been asked, but the first one I had was, why didn't you go directly to the BBS website and or staff to gain additional understanding as to how to reactivate or renew your license?
Because that's the way I've always done it. I've always dealt with an attorney to help me assist me with those kinds of issues.
And then the next question might not be for you, but the question is, what's the process for reactivation of a license? Has it changed?
Can we hold that one and then, but remind me that that's a question you need answered, okay?
Thank you.
I don't mean to cut you off at questions of Ms. Shevitz. Do you have
That's all
additional
that
questions?
I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming today. I'm a little bit confused. So the conference was in 2009, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And how did you find out that there was an issue with that somebody might have filed a complaint? Is that what you discovered?
Yeah, I know for sure that my current counsel told me that there was a complaint and what the nature of the complaint was, which I actually never knew until after I hired him.
So you didn't know anything about it until you hired your current lawyer?
I think it's possible that Steve may have mentioned it, but again, Steve Frankel, former attorney, but it was more in passing, and he never seemed to take it seriously. So, and when he took things seriously, I took them seriously with him. So I just didn't understand. I'll never understand why that happened that way.
Okay. So you, as far as you knew, you went to the conference, you did your conference thing, and afterwards you had hired him to help you activate and reactivate and renew your license, along with other things that you had him retained for.
The conference was in November of 2009, and I saw him June, July, as I recall. I don't have the paperwork in front of me, 2010. So that's a long period of time.
Okay, I just needed clarification. And one more question. I'm not clear. You did not know that your license had been deactivated and reactivated?
No.
And you didn't know your license had been revoked?
Not until
2012.
Until 2012. in the way I described that Steve gave that to somebody else who gave that to me, and it wasn't even a complete set of paperwork, so I'm sitting there going, looking through the paperwork, and I'm going, I don't understand. I mean, I was just shocked.
You received some sort of paperwork, but you didn't know what that paperwork was at all.
Apparently, Steve had decided that he was going to look on the website, and he made a copy and gave it to a third party, basically.
Okay. Not really clear, but I think what you're saying is you had papers, you didn't understand what they were, and expected him to handle it.
I understood that the license had been revoked, but it was completely unclear why. I mean, I didn't understand what that related to. I didn't know why it had been revoked.
Okay,
it was
so
unclear. I mean, I clearly understood that it was revoked because this is a revocation, and I clearly understood that. But
And what year was that again?
2012.
Okay. Thank you very much. That helps. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. You had mentioned that you were ready to return to work by 2010, and the flood was in 2008. I'm wondering if you've had any sort of employment since 2010?
No, I haven't. I actually have been advised by colleagues who are physicians and doctors that I shouldn't do anything under the current circumstances to even try to get work because it might affect my reputation, which I already felt had been bruised.
During the time you had your license, you attended the law and ethics classes every couple of years that were mandated to do, I assume?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Did the instructors in those classes ever talk about how to contact the BBS or what to do if you ever got a letter or heard anything about a complaint?
What I was told early in my practice basically is that if you have an issue, don't deal with the board directly. Get an attorney. So that's been the rule I've gone by since I've been in practice. I mean, not since 1990, but whenever things came up, yes.
Okay, and you retained Mr. Frankel in 2010?
Yeah, yes, I did, but I'd worked with him for years, so this is why it's such a surprise. Excuse me, a surprise for me.
And he'd been competent during the previous time, or you wouldn't have retained him, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it was a shock, really.
And then, could you explain to me why it took you 2 years to change attorneys?
Because I would call him up and I would say, will you do this, will you do that? And then he'd say yes, and then he didn't do it.
So you're just hoping that, I mean, that
it was
he
a
would.
repetitive thing. I mean, you should see the phone logs. He can speak to the specifics of that because I gave him copies. But, yeah, I needed a second opinion. I mean, I trusted him so much. I just couldn't believe he could do anything like that.
And then I have one question about something prior that one of my colleagues, or I think the attorney asked. Your home was completely destroyed in 2008, is that correct?
Yeah. I had
almost
mold.
Completely?
Yeah. I had mold and stuff. It had to be remediated. I mean, I had it was 2 stories, so I had a waterfall from the second floor down to from the second floor to the first floor, and prior to that, the whole first floor had flooded. So it was a charming experience.
It sounds horrible.
From the toilet, so to be specific. Yeah.
Were you on vacation or away from the house at the
No,
time?
no.
Ooh, you were in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have you said that you were still receiving mail, so the mail box was located somewhere near the
front
street?
of the house, in the front of the house. Yeah. It was attached to the right. Well, if you come into the house, it'd be on the left-hand side. If you go out of the house, it'd be on the right-hand side.
There's a mail slot in the door?
No, it was a mailbox that just closed
Right
on the
outside
top.
the front door?
That's correct, yeah.
And that was dry and secure during this period of time?
Probably one of the few places that was dry and secure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you describe how in the past you renew your license? Your license since 1990, right? So you've been through multiple times, at least probably, every 2 years, 7 or 8 times at least, right? So tell us, how you renew your license in the past.
It comes in the mail. I write out a check. I mark the appropriate boxes and put a stamp on the return envelope and mail it back in. This was different, though, because my house was, as I said, a disaster, and it was being remediated. And I was dealing with the insurance company. There was a lot going on, but I'd never let it lapse. And I was advised by Steve Frankel to just pay the fee. And when I'm ready to go back, when the house is ready, then I could just, let you guys know, let the board know, and everything would be fine. I'd never dealt with that before, so getting a specific answer to that question was important.
So I'm wondering, he will have to receive pretty specific instruction from you in order to help you deal with your license. So I'm very unclear about the fact that, how the license was actually renewed, and you said that, you didn't know that. The form had to be signed in person. I mean, it means that, you have to have your real signature on it. So I'm very unclear
it's
how
a
that happened.
mystery to me. I don't know. I was informed by my current attorney, but basically, I didn't know. It was a surprise to both of us, actually.
So also, I have maybe just help me clarify. I was looking at the timeline. So your license was, inactive, was actually renewed on October 22nd. And, in your statement, you actually said that you hired Frankel to help you, renew your license. So obviously, you knew that you instructed him 3 months before the license was renewed. So help me understand, how that happened.
I'm not sure what time period are you talking about where it was renewed and I didn't know about it?
In your statement, in your statement, you said that, you had, you hired Frankel in mid-2010. My license was inactive and my dues has not been paid. So, so it was very obvious, from that statement, you said that, you hired Frankel because you're aware that that was the time you haven't, get your license was inactive. So, so it's, sorry.
No, that's all right. Can we get an answer to that, though? Did you know, based on the statement, the implication is that you knew when you hired Mr. Frankel that you had not paid your dues and your license was in an inactive status. Is that accurate?
No, it's not accurate. The dues had been paid as far as I knew.
Okay, so you, notwithstanding this statement,
okay, now I understand.
Implies
okay.
that you knew that. You did not know that.
No, I'm getting a little confused between what I know and what I don't know. Just, I'm on odd years. My license is
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
So just back up a second. When you hired Mr. Frankel, mid-2010, that's accurate. Is that right?
That's true.
Okay. Did you know that your license was inactive then? You hired him?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Your question.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Follow up?
Question I wanted to know, you mentioned in your testimony that you'd be willing to take another psychological examination. Have you ever, I just don't understand this, have you ever been treated for any psychological conditions in your life?
In my entire life. I've gone to therapy to deal with some grief and loss issues over the period of my life, but I've not been in the kind of therapy that this implies that I would have needed.
Okay,
That the complaint implies that I would have needed. The implicit point in that complaint is that I was psychotic. I mean, that was just bizarre to me because it's just untrue.
You're talking about the statement at the convention?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. Implies that I'm OCD and that I'm psychotic. I mean, it's just like, it was shocking to even see that as well. I I don't understand that.
Well, my question, though, is that you're willing to take these exams, but if you feel as though this was something that is alien to you, then it seems to me, why wouldn't you challenge the fact that, you know, you were being accused of having bizarre behavior of some sort?
Didn't know that until Cassandra Kearney, I believe, or perhaps it was Julie, gave me a summary of the problem underlying the anonymous complaint. She did not know what the complaint was until I was able to get that from the staff. And the general policy, as I understand it, is that, you know, complaints need to stay anonymous, and I certainly can understand that. And but I was able to finally get a summary and that protected the anonymity. And I can remember the day in my office when I told Mimi, "Hey, Mimi, here's what this says," and you know, she started falling apart basically because she was so upset about, you know, what had been said. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think she was understanding your question, sir. That's why I intervened.
No, that's essentially getting at, because it just seems to me that there appears to be some negligence in terms of her own due diligence, and I'm just trying to figure out, you know, whether or not you know, she had really exercised all of her rights and understood them, or was there some other reason that was a gap in her knowledge level or something that might have something to do with her ability to, you know, safeguard patients?
Well, all I can say is that if I'd been her counsel, this would have never happened, and that she had relied on her counsel. As she said, she'd made him executor of her will. I mean, they had a long relationship. They discussed ethical issues. She trusted him, and he'd always performed. And this time, I had the retainer agreement where he agreed to do just this, you know, to help her reactivate her license. And I think part of her concern that she forgot to mention, although she mentioned it earlier in another context, is she heard about the conference, about the objection. And so she went to Steve, and Steve said, you know, don't worry about it, it's not important. But she then said, okay, and she went ahead, and I have records that show she did pay her dues. She started getting into into continuing education, but he just didn't she thought he was taking the responsibility. In retrospect, that was a bad decision on her part.
Let me follow up, because I think, Dr. Douglas, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Dr. Douglas is asking is, during the time that these events transpired at the convention and the house situation with the failure to receive the mail for whatever reason, he seems to be asking, were there some emotional difficulties that might have interfered with the way in which she received her mail, examined her mail, responded to it, or the way in which she behaved at the convention? Is that the gist of your question? Okay.
I felt that I made a reasonable concern of mine known to the appropriate people at the conference. Believe me, if I had this to do over again, I will never say another word in a conference, ever. And I think that's a shame, because I think that organizations need that kind of feedback. I didn't do it in a malicious way. I wasn't hostile. I was neutral. I was reasonable. I felt that their response to me was unprofessional.
Okay, so I'm gathering from your answer that your answer is there were not emotional difficulties that affected your behavior either at the convention or the way in which you handled your affairs, including your mail.
That's correct.
Okay.
Good morning. Going back to the conference, and you just alluded to that again, and one of the charges was, according to you, you were challenging the organization for plagiarism for Carl Rogers. And you mentioned that because of your background in technology, you felt that you had evidence to do so. You mentioned in your testimony...
Those weren't connected. Carl Rogers, there was one class about technology. There was another class about some other kind of counseling technique, which was basically could have been Carl Rogers.
Okay. I guess my question, I did not ask it well. My question is, in your testimony, you said that you also had a background in technology. Could you explain that?
I have a Master of Fine Arts from Mills College in electronic music and recording media. If you go on the web and write my name in, or you go to YouTube, you'll see a piece I did sound effects for. This was the same machine that did the graphics for Star Wars. Actually, was a black and white. It was it was a black and white 3D. I guess you'd say monitor at this point. I mean, the days that I did this, we're talking a while back. And then there was another, these are the professors of the graduate program I did after my MFA in electronic music from Mills. I did some postgraduate work in computer animation at the University of Illinois. Oh. And so, I mean, this is won national and international awards, and I did the soundtrack for that. And there's other things you can see with my name, other work I've done. I mean, there's a long list. I mean, it's sort of like you'll see different things that I've done over the years. And I also have almost a second BA in math and computer science. So, and I actually wrote a book for kids to teach them basic programming, you know, in the old days where you had BASIC. So I've kept up. I mean, I'm not a tech whiz. I'm more of a user in terms of a creative tool that I would use it. So when I was actually really interested in the one class that they had on technology because it's become more and more of our lives, and it was really unique and interesting. But I just felt dissatisfied with that as well. I wish that the person had been more knowledgeable. That's all. And believe me, I don't hold myself out as a major knowledgeable person. Just, you know, I've used it more as a tool for creative expression.
So it sounds like to me that with your experience, it sounds like it's pretty extensive, especially with a bachelor's degree in computer science.
I'm like minus a couple math classes, but yeah, other than that.
That's pretty impressive. You would not consider yourself a novice when it comes to technology?
With some technology, I still have trouble with Windows, you know, but that's just a personal thing, and I don't spend the time on it. It hasn't been a priority for me, but probably more than some people and a lot less than many, many others.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're all grappling with the timeline issue a little bit, so bear with us. It's a little complex. So the flood was in summer and fall of 2008.
That's correct.
And that's at the point in time that you referred your clients elsewhere and were working on the house. So then in your petition, it says that the conference was in the fall of 2009 and that at that time you were aware that your license had not, the renewal fees had not been paid. Is that true, or did you still think in 2009 that your license was still okay?
I think I paid the fees in 2009 as best as I can recall.
Okay. So you thought you still had an active license when you went to the conference to get your CE?
I would have been a few units off from, you know, making it completely active.
Okay.
But I was, you know, living in a hotel, you know, and trying to deal with contractors and you know, separate attorney for what was going on with the house. So if that makes any difference.
So you knew you paid the renewal fee.
Right.
We're just working on continuing ed units.
Yeah, I just needed a few more continuing ed hours, and that's one of the reasons why I went to Steve. to get information about how that worked. And he said as long as I paid the fees, I just needed to get the additional hours and.
Yeah, because that's been a requirement for a long time, right? The CEUs kind of.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect for any special treatment on that.
Okay, but you thought you still had a good license. Okay, that's my point. And then it says that when you hired Frankel in 2010, your license was inactive.
I knew it was going to be inactive. He told me it would be inactive. Steve Frankel said it would be inactive.
Because
I hadn't completed the continuing education hours. I was so busy with trying to rectify the house.
But not because of any other concerns with the
No,
license,
no.
just because you hadn't finished your CEs? Okay.
Yes, I mean, there's no connection between my trying to work the system around something that had happened at the conference and my going to Steve, because I actually thought it was a non-issue.
And I just have one more question. You've said repeatedly that your practice is who you are, that it's part of your identity, and you've talked about how tremendously important it is to you. Did you ever think about relocating your practice since you couldn't practice out of your home?
I didn't think it would take as long as it did. I mean, that's the best answer I could come up with. And then Steve said he would handle anything else, and I didn't think I was in any danger. And so the way I describe it to Rick is it was like waiting for Godot. Waiting for Godot?
Okay, I have no more questions. Thanks.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm hesitating whether to ask more about the timeline, but as you can see, the
Feedback.
Let the record reflect it's not Plenty's Council's phone.
That's your phone. I'm sorry, I had it on vibrate. It was right by the Sorry.
So I think all of us still continue to be a little confused about the timeline and when you knew what. But perhaps I'm not going to ask exactly that. I just wanted to ask one question. When is the renewal date for, what year would you renew your license? You said it was in the odd years?
Odd years, yes.
So it would have been renewable in 2009 and then again in 2011?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And that's when I actually had asked Steve specifically to call up and see if, because he had mentioned there had been a complaint. He didn't seem worried about it, so I didn't worry about it. And so I'd actually asked him before it was my license was due for renewal to actually call the board. And he said he would, and he didn't. And that's why all of this ended up happening. I didn't know that someone had sent me a letter that I needed to see a psychiatrist. I actually thought a lot of that would be handled by Steve. I just didn't, and it's just a mystery to me. I don't have a good explanation for it.
What month is your license renewed?
November in the odd
November.
years. Yeah, the end of November is, I think, the 30th, if I recall.
Okay. And up until that time, though, you had been renewing it by yourself, right?
Yes.
And when one gets the renewal notice, there's also an option to say, I want to make my license inactive.
To be honest with you, having a license that's inactive had never even occurred to me before, so if it's there, it's not something I had ever paid much attention to.
Then my question is about your transferring of your patients or referring them out. I imagine the flood happened all of a sudden. When did you start the process? And I guess Betty asked that question. Did you ever think about setting up practice someplace else? Because you said you were temporarily not.
I didn't think that it would take as long as it did, honestly. I just thought that it would take a few months to get things together, but as certain experts came in, then I found out that there was mold and certain things in the air that was unsafe. So, I mean, that there was a fight to deal with that as well.
So, how many patients did you have at the time when the flood happened?
Maybe around 15 people, roughly 15-ish, something like that.
And so when did you stop seeing them in your residence, and how long did it take to transfer them out to other people?
Stopped seeing them, I don't know, within a few weeks after the flood, especially as I noticed certain smells in the house, and then I had it inspected by an expert to make sure that it was safe or not safe. And I, as I said, a lot of people were kind of ready to just, they were done. I mean, they were getting really close to being finished with their own therapy, and a lot of them actually were. I mean, I tended to work long-term with people with very unique and complex cases. And so when people kind of get to that point where they worked through a lot of the issues, done. And it's not appropriate for me or even legal or ethical for me to hang on to someone just so I get money, you know.
If I can ask one more. You have a very impressive background in technology, and clearly you know things. You mentioned that you wanted to bring up the issue of the difference between the internet and the deep web. And perhaps many of us sitting in this room don't know anything about the deep web. So let me ask this question. It's a related question.
An interesting question.
Yeah, and probably not something we would debate here, but my question was, you said you had never, or maybe just once, been on the board's website.
Actually, I tried to get on, the only time I ever tried to get on the website was after I found out that my license had been revoked. And I wanted to see if I could find, since I said that the paperwork was incomplete, I thought maybe if I got that one extra page, I'd understand why it happened. And I actually had trouble negotiating the website, sorry. So he did it, so I figure if, you know, he could probably tell me how to do it. I never tried after that. I just had to deal with what was in front of me. That's what I've done.
All right, thank you.
Honor, may I read just to clarify one point?
Yes.
Would that be appropriate? Steve did contact the board in 2011. He contacted investigator Don Tu, who was working for the board to see really if, the way he described it in deposition, whether or not Mimi was practicing without having paid her dues and having her active license. That's what was being investigated. So I always found it curious why Steve didn't get these notices, because the board knew that he was representing, I say the board loosely, knew that he was representing Mimi, and in fact required him to send, you know, a letter showing his authorization to talk for Mimi before Mr. Tu would appropriately talk to him. For some reason, I just thought, well, then Steve must have gotten these notices. He must have gotten these notices. To this day, I don't know whether he actually did, but I do know that Don, I don't think he did, because I think Don Tu told me in deposition that he just put the authorization in an investigative file, and it never got over to you know, the department or the board that would be issuing the notices. So thing could go wrong. Everything did go wrong, and see, she thought Norm, you know, that's what would happen. That's what was happening, and I found that out after, and I didn't really know what happened myself until Don Tu told me in deposition, and just one of those things.
I have a question that the answer may be private, and you tell me that it's fine.
Can I ask the question before you ask the question?
Yes.
What's the difference between private and not private? So I'm clear, because I'm trying to be Okay.
let's hear the question.
Okay.
And then hold your answer.
Okay. The flood must have upset you greatly. And then there was another one, how long after that?
Within a few months, just a couple months, 2-3 months.
How did that happen?
Toilets backed up. First downstairs, and then upstairs. 2,400 square foot house, pretty much destroyed. Brand new piano.
Lost a lot. Did you, were you mentally distraught by this?
I think I understand what you're getting at. I don't think that I was distraught to a point where I was acting in a psychotic way, an inappropriate way, in an OCD kind of way, although I can certainly understand given the toilets overflowing. But no, I handle things pretty well. I handle a lot of things better than most people, especially when there's I'm great under stress, really great under stress. So I don't think that that's the reason why all of this blew up, honestly. If that's what you're asking, yeah. Is that the private part?
No, I was going to ask if you sought therapy for it.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
That's why it was also surprising when Rick told me, my current attorney told me that I'd been in therapy and all these awful things had happened, and my father died the year before when he hadn't. I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to that, other than I was devastated that it was someone I trusted.
Thank you.
Good morning. I thank you, too, for coming. I just want to ask a couple of questions to clarify the previous answers. You were asked whether you were under psychiatric treatment in 2010. Your answer was no. But was there any treatment before or after 2010?
Any therapy?
Psychiatric, specifically psychiatric treatment.
When you mean psychiatric, you mean psychiatric psychotherapy?
No
or
psychotic, psychiatric.
I wasn't taking any medications for any psychotic illness. Is that what you mean?
But were you seeing anybody? Because you answered the question, no, you were not under psychiatric treatment in 2010. My question is, were you under any psychiatric treatment before or after 2010?
I've been in therapy on and off,
Okay.
periodically for different reasons.
Under care of psychiatrist or
No, usually to a therapist, but it's been it's been years and years since I've seen a therapist.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Now, the second question, I would like some clarifications. You mentioned, I think you mentioned Steve Franco also handled some of your financial affairs. Did I understand correctly? Or someone is handling your financial affairs?
No, someone else was handling some of my financial bills and stuff.
Bills and stuff.
Basically secretarial.
Yeah, but it's not because you're incapable of handling it.
No.
Okay. I just want to clarify
when you
that.
have a busy practice, it's just, and stuff coming in and out for managed care, and I was on most of the networks, so I'm sitting, it's hard enough to keep up with that. So anything that can unburden me in that way, I was grateful for and willing to pay for.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Hi.
Hi.
I didn't have a question before, but now I do. You have your PhD in clinical psychology?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you now or have you ever held a license with the Board of Psychology?
No, I thought about it. I didn't want to slave myself out for another 3,000 hours. I had a full-time practice. I got a lot of referrals, and I was doing really well. Sometimes I think it would have been a good idea. Sometimes I don't know. So, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, additional question?
Ultimately, when all's said and done, who's responsible for your license?
Well, I think you probably think that I should say I am, and probably that's right.
Thank you.
I thought I relied on people to help me with that. Yeah.
Just a little follow-up question. So I heard that, you said, back in 2009, you paid the dues and you were doing the continuing education to renew your license, correct?
Correct.
So according to the board history, your license history, it looks like, you were actually, the license was expired on November 30th, 2009 due to non-payment of renewal fees.
As far as I remember, I paid that. I'm like positive I paid it. I don't know what happened. I mean, it sounds like I don't have an explanation. I mean, I just don't. As far as I remember, I wrote a check for that specifically. I remember writing the check. Is it possible I didn't put a stamp on the envelope?
I'm just checking.
I don't know.
I just want to make sure that, we're on the same page and clarifying this
No,
inconsistent.
if I owe the money, it's something I need to pay. I actually want to know that.
Okay, additional board questions? Yes.
Just a really quick question for Mr. Hart. You had stated that you were mystified by why Mr. Frankel had not, or you didn't know if he had received the notifications from the board.
Right. I would have thought that usually when I represent somebody, or an organization or official, governmental department, in some formal sense will even talk to me. They want an authorization to do that. And when I then provide the authorization by getting my client's consent to represent her, they know I'm the lawyer then. And when they know I'm the lawyer, they may send notice to her, but they also send them to me. I mean, that's just, in my 40 years of practice, that's the way it works. That's the standard of practice. And so I just assumed when I first took this case that that the board had made a mistake too. Why hadn't they sent these notices to her counsel when they knew that she had a counsel? And our decision was that she wanted to practice, and even if if the board technically made a mistake here that would have prevented her from getting those notices, possibly, then, I think there was a possible negligence on behalf of somebody in the organization.
Thank you. Wait, hang on.
We decided not to sue the board because she wants to practice, and we don't want to bite the hand that feeds us. So
I'm not interested in Mr. Frankel's competence. I guess I'm more interested in your assumption. So is your assumption that the board would have mailed everything to him and her, or?
I don't know. I don't know what your practice is.
I think we're really off topic here.
Okay.
The board was obliged to serve the petitioner at the address of record.
Right.
The exhibits received reflect that was done in this case. That satisfies due process. So I don't know how meaningful it is.
That's just what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're certainly not complaining about that.
Yes. Question? Okay. Did you have any other questions? Okay, thanks.
Okay, and I don't know if this is a question for the petitioner or for counsel, but just a quick question on the psychiatric assessment. Sources of information, Doctor, too close to the mic, right? Sources of information, Dr. Levy states where he lists what he reviewed. One of the statements are medical records of Mimi Shevitz. Were they physician records? I don't need to know the details. Internist?
Everything that we had. Because my concern was, before I amend a complaint and add emotional distress, I want to know if this is real. And if she's having that much emotional distress, then I don't want to pursue her license. I want to tell her to go get therapy. And he comes, he says, look at his qualifications. I mean, please review his vita, because it's extremely impressive. I never abused him. I've never talked to him before. I wanted to know before, we got invested in this lawsuit. And so am I avoiding your specific question?
Well, no, you've answered it, but what were your specific instructions to him? Because the psychiatric assessment is written in a particular way. It's a rule out, so rather than a complete eval. So I'm just interested in what your specific instructions to him were.
Okay. I told him to tell me, first I didn't even ask him about fitness for practice. I figured that was sort of a second thing. So the first thing I asked him was to evaluate Mimi, to do whatever he needed, to ask for whatever he needed, and tell me, because I'm his client, tell me whether or not, this is for real, or whether, prior things in her life, the death of her father, or other stresses she may have had in her life, could he separate the emotional distress that she was experiencing from Mr. Frankel's failure to follow through, or her perception that he let her down? Could that be distinguished from other types of emotional distress? Because defenses to emotional distress in a lawsuit, what a defense, if I'm on the defense side, I'll try to prove that, she already had all this emotional distress, and what we did was just, another, straw on the bundle. And I didn't want to get a lot of money into a lawsuit unless I knew, and I'm not competent in any manner to know that. So that's why I hired him, to tell me that. Then when he had what he wanted and he met with her, I think they met for 8 hours or something, for a long period of time, I was sort of on the edge about the call, and he called me and we talked, and he said, no, I think, I'll give you a fit to practice letter. I think she's fine. I think that she did suffer emotional distress by being let down by Steve, and that her practice is her identity. That's what she relates to, and it's been taken out from under her, and so that it's appropriate. And I thought about bringing him in, but he's very expensive, and I didn't, because I thought if you checked him out, you would see that, how reputable he is, and that would carry weight.
So you had two specific questions, one regarding the ability to deal with a lawsuit, the other fitness to practice. You essentially had two yes or no kinds of questions. Is that right?
Well, no, he came up with the fitness for practice. I'd never heard the term fitness for practice. Frankly, I'm mostly in federal court on constitutional issues. I took this case because I wanted to. So I asked him about the emotional distress, because I wanted to know, because Mimi kept telling me this stuff, and I don't really know. I mean, I can't evaluate that. And then when we're done, he said, yes, and I'd be happy to give you a fitness for practice letter. It's the first time I'd ever heard that phraseology. First case like this I've ever had, really, to be honest with you. And, I've had malpractice cases, but I've never dealt with what fitness for practice to be a licensed therapist entails. And so he suggested that, and I said, yeah, that'd be great, please. And that's when we got the letter and tried to figure out what else might matter, to the board, and that's where we got other letters from other people she's worked with over the years.
Thank you. And I have one really quick question for the petitioner. 6.25 hours, Dr. Levy states that he spent 6.25 hours in person with you. That was face-to-face, or part of that was taking tests?
No, it was face-to-face.
Did you take any psychological tests?
You didn't see any need to.
No paper and pencil tests. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions by board members? Yes, and at this point, I think we're going to have to wind it up, folks, so let's have very pointed questions, and you'll apologize if you don't fit that criterion, if I tell you it's not appropriate. Okay, your question.
So my question was also about how did you pick Dr. Levy to be the evaluator?
Actually, the only times I've tried to pick a psychiatric lawyer, I was of counsel for a large Sacramento firm for some time, and they did a lot of defense. And So I dealt with professional witnesses, but I didn't really know who I could trust to tell me what I wanted, because I wanted to know. I wanted the truth. And I could live with it either way. I just needed the real answer so that I could make my decision about whether I was going to put my time into Mimi. And she found him. I said, Mimi, I don't know who to choose. She says, okay, well, I'll get online. And she looked up, and she found this guy, and she said, gee, he's over in UC, and, you know, you ought to see his resume, and, you know, he looks like a nice Jewish man, and I would be willing to go talk to him.
And the second question I had is this the only report that he gave out, or was there
Yes.
a more comprehensive? No.
It's the only report, and I asked him about that, and he said, no, fitness to practice letters are usually just, you know, real short, what you did, how much time you spent, and the conclusion that you reach. And that
Thank you.
suited my purposes, because I, you know, being in the lawsuit simultaneously, I didn't want to have a real long report, because I didn't know if it'd be good or bad at that point. And if it was bad, then that would really hurt my lawsuit. But he's the one that said this was the standard.
Sorry, what is the lawsuit?
We're suing Steve Frankel for dropping the ball and not following up on what he contractually in writing agreed to do.
So you said you would rather
Well,
not have the full report?
Well, one of the things you do in a lawsuit.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm
Okay.
going to cut it off here. Yeah, this
It's
is
a
why.
technical issue.
This is why lawyers make bad witnesses.
Okay.
You can't answer a
Explaining
question.
too much.
You can't answer a question.
Okay.
Yes, no, or there were no other reports. Dr. Chin, did you have an additional question?
Yes, Your Honor. I do have a point of question, because there's some question about the action or inaction of Mr. Franco. I want to know whether at any one point he ever got a power of attorney from you representing you. Have you ever signed a power of attorney, to appoint Mr. Franco on your behalf, to act on your behalf, power of attorney?
All I know is the contract that I signed is, in fact, the only contract I ever signed with him was the one that Rick is referring to, the contract to assist me with, you know, the provider ID and any additional stuff related to an inactive license and making it active again. So he and I have always dealt with like kind of an hourly basis, and he's never requested that I sign anything before. This was the only time I ever signed anything. Oddly enough.
The answer is no.
Okay. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions by board members? Nope. Okay. Anything else you or your client want to say before we submit the matter?
Thank you very much.
Anything else from your side?
No, thank you.
Okay. Then the matter is submitted. The record is closed. Okay, off the record. Will the board meet? Will the board hear all of the petitions and then decide them? Okay, so that's what will happen. The board will hear all the petitions this morning, decide them in executive session, private, secret, and then the board will issue a written decision, the matter, which will be sent to you. So I don't have to remind you, I don't think, but make sure the address that the board has, an address to which you, don't look to your lawyer, because the primary responsibility is on you. I'm not sure the board will serve your lawyer. It may or may not, but make sure your address is the one to which you want this decision sent.
I'll make sure to double check. I'll go online, figure out a way to manage it, take care of it, promise.
Okay, and then I want to return to, we're not going to go back on the record, but Ms. Ashley, you wanted to know something about the process for reactivating a license, but we can do that off the record. That's just a board process that your staff can tell you about, all right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick restroom break, 10 minutes before the next case. I understand.
Thanks. Okay. Ready? All right. On the record, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Graham Danzer, this case bears Office of Administrative Hearings case number 2014-010928, agency case number AP-2009-100. My name is Carl Engemann, Administrative Law Judge, assigned to sit with the board hearing this matter. The board, of course, is the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and I'm not going to ask the board members to identify themselves for the record again. They have announced their presence, and all board members are still present in the previous matter, but Ms. Alamo Latif, would you state your appearance for the record, please?
Stephanie Alamo Latif, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 and Business and Professions Code Section 4990.30, and I'm representing the people of the state of California. My role is not adversarial today, but it's intended to protect the public interest, and I'm here to assist the panel in fact-finding. And I'm here to ensure that the panel has adequate information from which to make a decision.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Danzer is present, correct?
Yep.
Mr. Danzer, you're going to represent yourself today?
Yep.
Okay, and did you understand, sir, had you wished and at your own expense, you could have been represented by an attorney in these proceedings?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then we're going to follow the site. Were you here for the prior petition?
Yes.
Okay, so you know the protocol we're going to follow. I'm going to ask Ms. Alamo Latif to provide a background statement to the board. Then we're going to hear from you if you wish to address the board. Then Ms. Alamo Latif is going to ask questions if she's so inclined, and then board members will ask questions. All right?
Okay.
All right, please.
The board issued petitioner an associate clinical social worker registration on August 26, 2010. The registration expires on August 31, 2014, and it's currently on probation until October 8, 2015. The board initially denied petitioner's application for associate clinical social worker registration and filed a statement of issues in December of 2009, which was based upon criminal convictions for criminal trespass in 2001, drunk driving in 2003, and drunk driving in 2007. In addition, petitioner's admissions indicating an extensive history of convictions including shoplifting, alcohol, possession of ecstasy, and possession of drug paraphernalia. Pursuant to decision and order in case number AP 2009-100, the registration was denied, the denial stayed, and the registration was issued upon probation for 5 years with optional and standard terms and conditions effective August 27, 2010. On August 23, 2012, petitioner went before the board to petition for an elimination of biological fluid testing and supervision conditions. His petition was denied, but was granted a reduction in the frequency of testing and supervision each to once per month. Petitioner is currently in compliance with all of his probation requirements, has submitted his quarterly reports consistently and in a timely manner, and all biological fluid tests have been negative. Petitioner has paid $3,600 of the $6,000 cost for probation monitoring. Petitioner is requesting to terminate his probation approximately 1 year and 8 months early. Because the burden is on the petitioner, I have no further statements but would like to reserve the right to question the petitioner. Thank you.
Okay, and do you wish to offer into evidence the petition and attachments to the petition at this point?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, do you want to identify them or simply offer them as a group of exhibits?
I can go through and identify them as the board has them.
Okay, and let me ask you, Mr. Danzer, before these exhibits are identified, you're familiar with your petition and the attachments to the petition, and actually I have them in front of me, and they are attachments 1 through 8. Is that correct?
I believe there's 10, Your Honor.
10? You're right, 10. Thank you. So I want you, Mr. Danzer, I want you to take a look through those. I assume you've seen those previously, and are you going to have any objection to my receiving any of those exhibits into evidence in support of your petition?
No, one thing I should probably clarify is that there's 2 letters from the same supervisor that are basically identical. The date at the top right was done incorrectly the first time, so she resubmitted another letter. So the second one from Jane Love, my supervisor, is the correct one. It's got the correct date.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I did note there were 2 letters. Okay. With that, are there any objections to the receipt of any of the exhibits tabbed 1 through 10?
No, that's okay.
Okay. Ms. Alamo-Latif, you wish to describe them for the record?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Exhibit number 1 includes the petition for early termination of probation, along with the attachments in support of the request, including 4 letters of recommendation and copies of transcripts for petitioner's graduate program.
Okay, and without indicating for each one my ruling, they all are going to be received, or they all are received in evidence. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Exhibit number 2 is the decision and order in the matter of the statement of issues against Graham Danzer, effective August 27th, 2010, with the attached underlying statement of issues. Exhibit number 3 is the decision and order in the matter of the petition for modification of probation terms of Graham Danzer, effective October 9th, 2012. Exhibit number 4 are quarterly probation reports covering August 2010 through December 2013, prepared by the petitioner. Exhibit number 5 are quarterly reports covering February 2011 through January 2014, prepared by petitioner's therapist. Exhibit number 6 are quarterly reports covering January 2011 through December 2013, prepared by petitioner's supervisor. Exhibit number 7 is correspondence regarding the tolling of probation. Exhibit number 8 are Pharmatech biological fluid test results. Exhibit number 9 is the notice of hearing. And exhibit number 10 is the registration history certification for clinical social worker registration number ASW 29082.
Okay. Anything else at this point?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Danzer, I think you indicated to me earlier that you do wish to address the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn, please. Solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you shall give in this proceeding shall be nothing but the truth. Will you please state your name for the record?
Graham Danzer?
Okay. And you are the petitioner in this matter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What would you like to tell the board in support of your petition, Mr. Danzer?
I wanted to clarify a couple of the facts. I don't know if they were, maybe if I had submitted some of the records incorrectly or something, but the arrest for my last DUI was in 2000. I mean, I know we discussed this the last time that I came in to talk to the board, but the last arrest was in 2004. Is that known? Yeah, is that, because when you first started talking, you mentioned that the conviction was in 2000, but it was in 2004, right? That was the arrest? Okay, I just wanted to double check. The other thing I noticed from the packet of information from the first hearing that we did the last time, one of the letters from a treatment program, a transitional treatment program that I went to after residential isn't in there. I figured that it might have still been in the board's records from the first hearing, but basically I went to residential treatment and then transitional afterwards, and there was a letter from that transitional center, so if it's not still in the board's record, I'd like to try to get that and send it to you guys just so you have it.
Mr. Danzer, let me just make you aware of something. I know you're trying to make eye contact with everyone. We appreciate that. But when you move your head back and forth, we miss part of what you're saying. So either speak up or keep your mouth close to the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was just saying that one of the letters that I turned in the first time that I came in to ask for modification of terms isn't in there. I know that I had attempted to submit it, but there should be another letter in the board's records from the last probation hearing that basically said that I did 3 months of transitional treatment after residential. So I was hoping that if that's not actually in the records from the first modification hearing, that I could get that to you guys somehow.
Well, let me ask you, sir, is there a reference to that 3 months program in the board's decision in the earlier matter? Do they refer to that in the decision?
I would think so. Would that be?
That would suffice if there's a factual finding to that effect.
Okay.
That's exhibit, I think, tab 3, right?
Okay, it is actually in the, I'm looking at page 6 on the, I think it's the original decision from 2010, and it says, I was a resident in the TLC program, so on, so I'm guessing that covers it. Okay.
Okay, that's in the original decision. That's what you're referring to? So that is exhibit 2 or tab 2?
That's right.
Page 6?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was there. So kind of other than that, I don't want to just like say the same thing I did the last time when I came in, but I mean, things are still going well. 10 years sober, March 24th. Still at the same clinic. You know, same sponsor, and I'm not sure what else to add. I mean, you guys can ask me questions. You know, go ahead.
Well, I think before I'm going to ask Ms. Alamo Latif to if she has questions, but I think what the board is most interested in is, well, 2 things. You've mentioned what's happened since the last time you filed your petition, but I think what the board is most interested in is why should the board grant your request for early termination rather than continuing with the probation until its normal expiration date. I think that's what the board is interested in.
Okay. Well, I mean, overall, it's been the whole thing's been more helpful than not. I think I mentioned it before, but a lot of what I need to do is kind of redundant. Like, you know, I go see the board supervisor, and then any direction I get from the supervisor that's authorized through the board, I have to go back to my clinical supervisor and make sure that that coincides with the treatment plans. You know what I mean? It's kind of redundant. I mean, I've taken, I don't know how many of these drug tests, but like a lot. And there's, you know, basically I don't know if there's still a kind of immediate purpose that it's serving. You know, if I have to do the whole 5 years, you know, I will. If I didn't have to, that would be easier on me, you know, for whatever that's worth. I don't know.
Okay, follow up on that. What hardships, if any, are imposed by virtue of the probationary conditions at this point?
The group, for my therapy requirement, I go to a long-term sobriety men's group that's actually helpful. I mean, I'm going to keep doing that even after this is done just to do it. But the testing and the board fees are, you know, I got to pay for it out of pocket, and I'm in school, and that's the main thing. I mean, I can make it work. You know, it's not something where I'm like, you know, I can't do this anymore. But, you know, if I didn't have to, it would be easier on me.
Okay. Ms. Alamo Latif, your questions.
Mr. Danzer, how do you feel about the behavior that led you to being disciplined by the board?
You mean the DUIs and such?
Yes.
It was kind of long story short. I mean, I think it was a wake-up call. You know, I was glad that things went the way that they did. You know, where like when I got my second DUI when I was 21, like I just remember kind of feeling like, okay, I got to get some help or this is just going to get worse. And I mean, I'm glad it happened then and that things kind of more or less worked out from there.
And you said that your sobriety date is March 24th, and that will be 10 years for you? And how do you maintain your sobriety?
12-step meetings mostly.
12-step meetings?
I have a sponsor that I meet with usually every other week, and then I go to a Monday night meeting and then usually a meeting later in the week.
And what step are you in that 12-step program?
I finished the steps the first time around when I was about 5 years in. I'm not currently working the steps with my sponsor, but I have a sponsee that's kind of in and out, so I kind of do the steps with him.
And what is your current support network?
For sobriety, it's mostly, I call my sponsor usually 2-3 times a week. Just because with the kind of meeting culture, a lot of the times the same people will come back over and over again. And there's a lot of people that I just kind of know by name and by eye. And, so I'll go a little bit early, I'll stay a little bit later. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of through the meetings.
Okay. And how do you currently handle stressful situations?
Talk to my fiance, I work out. As usual. I go to meetings, usually not kind of in response to something that happens. I go just to go. Like when I was earlier in sobriety, I kind of went in response to stress, but now it's usually, usually what comes up feels pretty manageable, just given kind of similar experiences in the past and figuring out how to work through them as best as possible.
Okay. And do you have a relapse prevention program or plan?
It's been so long since I felt like using. If it came up, like if I felt like using, I'd call my sponsor, and given where I'm at, it probably wouldn't take a lot of work to talk me out of it.
And why do you believe you would not repeat the same kind of conduct today?
Do you mean like why would I not go back to drinking?
Drinking and drugs and all of that.
I don't have a plan to. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure of how to elaborate.
Okay. What kind of work have you done since your license was placed on probation?
Okay, so that was 2010. So starting in 2010, I was at the East Bay Community Recovery Project, and I was basically in a day treatment program both for adults that had co-occurring conditions and kids that were on probation, and I was kind of split between those two programs. About 2.5 years in, most of the staff got laid off. In January, I took a position with Cal State East Bay in the MSW program, and I was the mental health coordinator on a temp assignment. It was about 6 months. And then for the last about going on 2 years, I've been at an agency down in Fremont called the Greater Hope Program, and it's a more intensive case management program that I do therapy with clients with.
And I have a question in regards to the information you provided in your packet. There was a transcript that you provided for your graduate program.
Mm-hmm.
And the transcript shows 10 attempted credits for 4 classes, and I believe the fall of 2013, but it doesn't show that any credits were earned or passed. Can you explain what happened last semester?
They're on record right now.
Okay, just not in the transcript you provided?
I don't think that they were ready until then.
Okay.
But I think it usually takes a few weeks for the grades to post.
Okay.
But they're, if I got a transcript as of today, I could show it to you and I'd show you the grades.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
What are your plans if your probation is terminated early?
I don't think anything would change for the next while. I'm in a Psych D program, and then I'm also at the Greater Hope program, and both are going well. So I think that it would just be more of that, and I'd be saving $150 a month or whatever I end up paying in the kind of fees. So I think things would stay relatively the same.
And would you continue to see a therapist?
The men's sobriety group that I go to at the LCSW has been, that was the one I mentioned when I first spoke up. That's been going really well. Like, it's been helpful to be in a group with other men that have been sober for a long time, because long-term sobriety is different than early sobriety. And so my plan is to kind of keep going as long as I have Kaiser coverage.
And you still owe the board about $2,400 in probation monitoring costs. Is your request to waive these costs?
If that was possible, I would be quite happy. I'm guessing that may not be. So, worst case scenario, if I need to pay it, I'll pay it. If I didn't have to, that would be great. So I guess you could put it on there. But usually what I do is, I make the payments closer toward the summer, and I do them in $400 increments.
And what assurances can you give the board that you will not violate any laws in the future?
I don't know. I don't have any plans to. I mean, I haven't in these last, I haven't in these last 10 years. I don't know, Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been a problem since me being sober, and so.
Okay.
That's the best I can do.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add and tell the board?
No, I think that's it. It's been a good ride so far. If I need to do this through the 5 years, I will. But if we can call it a wrap early, that'd be helpful to me.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Board members, let's start on this side with Dr. Chin.
Thank you for coming, and I think you should be commended. I really think you've done tremendous work in the past 10 years. So first question, are you still in the PhD program? Is that what the transcript is referring to, the clinical social work at the Sandville Institute?
Actually, I finished an MSW program at San Francisco State in 2008, and then I did a pre-doctoral social work program at Sandville that was 3 years, and then I started a Psych D program.
Thank you. The second question is, I guess what the board is interested in is your assurance today that you won't go into relapse, and I'm sure you learned a lot. So could you just tell us, because we know people can have 23 years sobriety when it comes to a certain situation, a stressful situation, a trigger, and there's no guarantee that they will not use drug or alcohol again. So if you could tell us, elaborate a little bit more how you can deal with that, and just to reassure us.
Sure. I mean, given my experience, usually that happens when people stop going to meetings and when they don't have a sponsor and they're just kind of on their own. I mean, I haven't been there with kind of every relapse, but I've never met anybody that's kind of stayed connected and had that problem. So I guess in a sense, it's like, I'm playing the numbers. I think 12 steps is the thing that's been the most proven to work for most people, and that's what I do. So I think that's, if we were looking for a safe bet, that would be it. Thanks.
Mr. Danvers, I want to congratulate you. It's a huge. Every year you put in is more and more meaningful.
Thanks.
You're now doing psychotherapy with your clients?
Yes.
Is there any part of anyone's therapy so far, or what you might think in the future, that you might not feel competent to deal with because of your own past? Or Dr. Chu mentioned triggers, but in addition to that, there are some kind of clients that I knew I wasn't as effective for because of my personal issues. We all have them, and I wondered if you have observed that about yourself.
Sure. I think something that's kind of helped me work through that, because whenever you work with somebody that has any kind of a kind of parallel experience, like something's going to come up. But I think like a lot of my supervisors have talked about in the letters they wrote to you guys, I'm pretty transparent when I meet with them. And so it ends up being something that can be helpful. Like, if we can figure out, like, okay, what does this mean? And is there some way that is what's coming up kind of a clue to what may be going on with the person that I'm working with? And so I think being transparent doesn't necessarily make that go away, but it makes it more helpful than a problem on the good days.
But you wouldn't. Are you in therapy and have a supervisor now?
I go to a long-term men's sobriety group with an LCSW, so I do group therapy. And then I think we talked about this the first time that we met for modification, but after I finished treatment.
And I point out that many of us were not on the board at that time.
Oh, okay. After I, there's a letter in support of this, but after I finished residential treatment and I went to transitional, the MFTI that I was seeing that was kind of overseeing my treatment went into private practice, and I saw him for individual therapy for about 3 years after that. So I did do individual therapy, but then more recently, like the last couple of years, I've been doing group.
So if you encountered countertransference that you felt might need to be explored, who would you do that with?
My current supervisor, actually, she just resigned. Jane Love was my supervisor, and she was great. I mean, I think just because we've known each other for the last couple of years, I felt like I could be pretty open with her about what's going on. I haven't met the clinical supervisor that's going to take over, but I'm usually, like a lot of my supervisors have talked about, and I'm pretty open about what's going on, just so that, I'm working in the right way. I mean, that would kind of be the plan.
Okay, I think that would be something that we'd want to know you're continuing with, as long as there might be these issues coming forward.
Yeah, I found that clinical supervision is probably the most helpful for that, but I mean, if something came up and I wanted to talk to the group, I mean, I could, but it's really more like, I mean, I think the way that I've separated is like, I go to supervision for help more kind of like with work, and then the group for my kind of ongoing recovery most of the time.
Mm-hmm. I have no questions.
When you mentioned the $2,400, is that what you owe the board right now? Or are these projected costs if you stay on probation? Are they, so which one is it?
That was actually, when I first signed up for the probation, I was told that there was $1,200 a year, and so I guess that's where the $6,000 is coming from. I think I've paid $3,600 to date. I think so. I'd have to double check that, but
So
I paid.
Okay, so the $2,400 you're referencing is in the future?
Right.
So you're paid up to date?
Right. I haven't made any payments for this current year, but I paid $1,200 for each of the previous years.
Okay, so you don't owe any money right now?
Right. Okay.
A couple of questions, and they're interrelated. First of all, you're in a PhD program now?
PsyD, which is a yeah.
What's your area of emphasis, or do you plan to be in there?
I'd still like to be in, even though I'm in a psychology program, like I still want to be more of kind of a general practitioner that can work in community care and with people that come in with kind of every problem known to everybody.
Okay. Then the next question, what are your career aspirations?
Kind of the next step would be, I'm going to eventually need to take the license to be a psychologist. Getting married in the summer, and so we're planning kind of what to do from there. And I think overall, just because I've been happy with my clinical growth so far, like I kind of want to just kind of stay at the clinic that I'm at right now and see what happens and keep kind of refining and getting better at doing groups. I guess really like for the next while, just to kind of get to be a more competent clinician.
So now, since you last appeared before the board, and given our decision and your reflection on that, what have you learned about yourself as it relates to, your to present to us today that would assure us that you fully understand the depth of our deliberations?
I think the main thing was like when I first started doing all this, like it was kind of more of a struggle. I was like, I've been sober for a long time. Like, why do I have to do this now? And I did this stuff before when I was in treatment. But I think the main thing I kind of learned through this experience was like, okay, when I have to do things I don't want to do, like they can still get done, and at the end of the day, it'll be worth it. And it's something I think that applies to recovery, but also probably kind of everything.
So was there some specific aha that you learned about yourself? I mean, some deep structural piece that you could articulate?
That's the one that really sticks out the most. I think part of recovery, and a big part of being able to continue to go on, I think, is being able to kind of receive bad news well, and to kind of not just kind of sulk about it, but to kind of use what you can. And I think this whole experience has really kind of reinforced that. But that's been the bigger change, I think, is that I've gotten better at that.
Further questions?
Hi. So I would like to further elaborate on what Dr. Douglas have asked. So can you describe a little bit more about your emotional response after you receive, the board's decision, basically not completely giving you what you want? Can you describe, how that journey, your initial response, and how actually you work through that?
Sure. It was kind of, actually, just to clarify, like when I found out that I was going to have to go down to one test a month and one supervision session a month, I was actually pretty happy with that. I meant more like when I first got the probationary terms, I was like, oh no, like it was more, the modification I was actually pretty happy with. I didn't get everything that I wanted, but I was like, okay, this is much easier. Before, like when I was doing testing 5 times a month, I was needing to cancel clients in the morning and kind of, luckily I had a pretty merciful supervisor that was open to this. But I think like initially when I got the decision that said what the terms were of probation, Tom was my sponsor at the time, and I called and I was like, this seems really unfair, and I don't know, I have to do this, and blah, blah, blah. And he basically said, but you're getting a path to be able to do what you want to do, and you just have to do it with some conditions, so just go do it. And it was kind of a longer discussion than that, but that was the crux of it. And it was helpful. And then when the last decision came out, I was actually pretty happy with it. I wanted to not have to do it at all, but doing it once a month was way better than 5 times a month. So, yeah.
So, okay. So what? Let me ask another question. I'll come back to this one. I just lost my train of thought. So I also reviewed your progress report, and it seems like you're pretty consistent missing psychotherapy session about twice a month.
Is it twice?
Yes, it's about twice a month. It's so the board's order is for you to attend weekly psychotherapy. Have you ever thought about rescheduling your appointment so that you have to be complete compliance with what the board order?
I actually, respectfully, I want to double check that. That seems like a lot to me. Is there where's that located at? The twice a month? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm on the same page.
It's spread across attachment 4 on my book. So when you read through that, just that psychotherapy session, it's pretty, it ranges from about 0, 1 time, 2 times to 4 times. But the most frequent, when I count, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 quarterly report that you miss twice. So that's pretty consistent.
Okay, I'm starting at the beginning. There were none in the first quarter.
Okay.
There were none in the second quarter.
Uh-huh.
There were none in the third. Okay, so then I'm looking at, it looks like the 4th quarterly report. In that quarter, I mentioned that I had missed 2 sessions due to working late. So there were a couple that, in that quarter. Just to clarify, it was, I'm not saying this makes it okay, it was in 3 months. But I could have probably made a better effort to reschedule. Yeah, that's fair. And then, And then the fifth quarter, there was one that was canceled by my therapist. He was out of town. There was another in September in the fifth quarter that was due to illness. I was sick, but I could have rescheduled that. That's fair. There were none in the sixth. And then in the seventh quarter, which is about, I think, 1 year and 3 quarters into probation, there were 3 that quarter, so that was more. 1, I was ill. 2, it's cut off at the bottom, but so I, kind of respectfully, I mean, I think that what's been typical, if I'm remembering right, is it's usually maybe 2 out of 12, which is, I could have made it better after reschedule. That's fair, but I don't think it's 2 a month. I mean, I wouldn't be allowed to stay in the group if it was that often.
I just want to point out that,
Okay.
about that pattern.
I could reschedule. Yeah, okay, that's fair.
And the last question I have is it's about your triggers. So for every addict, it's important to understand, the trigger of relapse. So what are your triggers? I'm not sure I heard about, about the information.
I mean, I can't, not to avoid the question, but I can't remember the last time I felt like drinking or using. I mean, I could tell you what my triggers were when I still felt triggered, but I mean, I don't know if that would that be helpful? I mean, that was when I was like 21, 22, when I was first getting sober.
So can you pinpoint on things like, for example, stress, for example, loneliness, for example, not
Sure.
having, contact with parents, something like that.
Sure.
Something specific like that. So can you give us some examples so that at least we know you have a certain understanding about yourself, what the triggers are, so, in order to avoid relapse?
Sure. I mean, I'm thinking, I don't know if this would be hard to believe. I mean, even now that I think about it in treatment, I didn't really feel like using. I mean, I was actually glad to be there and to, I mean, I had a cousin that was across the street getting sober in another treatment center, and so I was actually, I mean, I liked being there. I don't remember feeling triggered, but I remember what was difficult. I mean, I don't know if it made me feel like I wanted to go use, but there was an ongoing court case. I was scared about that. I mean, I was in treatment and I was 21. Everybody was 50. I mean, that was hard. I mean, I hadn't had to go to that level of structure really kind of ever, so that was hard as well. I mean, those are the main things I remember.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just I wish I could give a better answer.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but I want to thank you for speaking up. Caesar tells me it's doing good, so thank you.
Just a quick question. Are you getting close to finishing your LCSW, your hours so that you could sit for the licensing exam?
Yes.
So are you anticipating or planning on doing that soon?
I should be taking the vignette in about a month.
Okay, so if all goes well, and if you were granted your request, then within a few months, you wouldn't have any supervision, right?
No, I think through my clinic I would still be going to, I think I would be going to group supervision. I'd have to double check. But then also, I mean, I know it's not kind of overseen by the board, but because I'm in a psychology program, at my practicum, I'm overseen by a psychologist as well. So there's that.
And when will you be done with your practicum?
This practicum will be done in July, and then I start another one, and then internship. So it'll be 3 more years, essentially, of definitely being supervised no matter what.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions by board members? Yes.
Are you planning to get licensed as a psychologist?
Yes.
Any further questions by board members? Ms. Alma-Latif, any further questions by you?
No further questions, Your Honor, but I believe that petitioner would like to submit a his packet, the prior petition for reinstatement packet that was not in the board's packet, and it includes letters of recommendation and just additional information on what he testified to today.
Okay. Is that right, sir?
Yeah, this is the stuff from the last hearing. I just wanted to make sure everybody had it.
Okay.
So.
All right. Somebody want to hand that to me, please? That'll be 11 if you have no objection. 11 in evidence. Okay, Mr. Danzer, last chance. Anything else you want to say to the board before the matter is submitted?
No, I think that's it. Thanks for hearing me out. Either way, we'll keep going forward. But if this can kind of go my way, that'd be great. So.
Okay, thank you for appearing, sir. With that, the matter is submitted. The record is closed. Off the record. I think you heard what I said to the earlier petitioner, and that is the board will hear all of the petitions, meet in executive session, decide each of the petitions, and will send you their decision relating to your petition for early termination. All right? Any
Sounds
questions?
Good. No, that's it. Thanks, though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's 5 minutes to 11. While the next petitioner is coming forward, we'll take a very quick 5-minute break. So please come back in 5 minutes.
Before we proceed, I have a procedural question. I'm formerly employed by Kaiser Permanente. My affiliated hospital is Santa Clara, and I do not believe I have a conflict of interest because I do not know Mr. Meyer, and I just want to make sure that is the case, that I can participate.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the only concern you have, I don't see that as a problem. So
thank you.
Okay. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Then we are on the record in the matter of the petition for modification of probation for Douglas Meyer. This matter bears case number 2014-010927, case number AP-2011-1969. My name is Carl Engemann, Administrative Law Judge assigned to sit with the Board of Behavioral Sciences, hearing this matter, and as I stated in the previous petition, I'm not going to ask the board members to identify themselves as they identify themselves in the first matter relating to Ms. Shevitz. So, Ms. Jansen, would you state your appearance for the record, please?
Thank you. I am Christina Jansen. I am appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 and Business and Professions Code Section 4990.30. My role here is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. I will assist the board in fact-finding in that I will ensure that the board has adequate information from which to make a decision on this petition. Thank you.
Okay, and for the record, Mr. Douglas Meyer is present, correct?
Yes.
All right, and you intend to represent yourself today, Mr. Meyer?
I do.
Okay, and did you understand, sir, that had you wished and at your own expense, you could have been represented by a lawyer in these proceedings?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you've watched the prior petitions and the way in which the board has conducted those hearings, is that right?
And quite a few webcasts as well.
I'm sorry?
Quite a few webcasts as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, Ms. Jansen, proceed.
Thank you. When this petitioner applied for registration as a marriage and family therapist intern, a statement of issues was filed. He and the board then entered into a stipulated settlement for a 5-year probation term, and therefore petitioner's registration was ultimately granted on November 8, 2012. The statement of issues was based on petitioner's 16 criminal convictions accrued from 1981 through 2004. Some of the convictions involved multiple counts, but petitioner was essentially convicted of DUI on 5 occasions, theft on 5 occasions, drug-related possession or distribution on 4 occasions, driving while his license was suspended for DUI on 2 occasions, and reckless driving. Petitioner admitted, and it is apparent from his record, that he had a significant drug and alcohol addiction problem during these years. In 2004, Petitioner's last conviction resulted in a sentence to serve approximately 10 months of substance abuse treatment through 3 separate programs, including a 30-day inpatient treatment program, 90 days at a behavior modification program, and 6 months at a support systems treatment center. Currently, Petitioner is here requesting modification of 3 of his terms of probation. First, he would like to decrease the frequency of his random urinalysis, which is currently scheduled approximately weekly. Second, a decrease in the frequency of psychotherapy, which is currently scheduled weekly. And third, termination of the requirement of proof of AA meeting attendance. Petitioner has served 1 year and 4 months of his probation term and has been 100% compliant. He has 3 years, 8 months remaining on his probationary term. Petitioner's main reason for this request is the expense, as it costs $68 per urinalysis and $150 per psychotherapy session. Petitioner is currently spending over $1,000 a month on the probation terms and costs. Petitioner's weekly therapist has not expressed an opinion on the frequency of Petitioner's visits. However, I will note that Petitioner brought a letter from his weekly therapist today, which he will submit, in which she does support his request. However, prior to that letter arriving today, she had not agreed to that request through her regular reports. Her reports do show a steady increase in Petitioner's level of trust with her and progress throughout the sessions. Petitioner has also had an in-depth psychological evaluation, and the evaluator in that case provided a recommendation that all probation terms remain unchanged. Petitioner has taken approximately 68 urinalysis tests and has passed every one. At this time, I would like to identify the exhibits in the packet before you. The first exhibit is the petition and modification of probation with the attachments filed by Petitioner, which I will request to be submitted into evidence.
Okay, and so you've heard me ask the prior petitioners, and I'll pose the same question to you. Mr. Meyer, do you have any objection to any of these exhibits being received in evidence?
No, sir.
Okay. Then, Ms. Jansen, all of them will be received in evidence, so please describe each one of them for the record.
Thank you. Attachment 2 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order dated October 9th, 2012, effective November 8th, 2012. The third exhibit is Mr. Meyer's quarterly written reports, which he has filled out completely and submitted on time. The fourth attachment are regular reports from Mr. Meyer's weekly psychotherapist, who reports quarterly to the board. The fifth attachment is somewhat unique. This is the confidential psychological evaluation, which I will request to be submitted into evidence under seal, pursuant to Civil Code Section 1798.40. Which provides that a psychological evaluation is not a public document and is not required to be disclosed to the subject if it is done for purposes of licensing. That is included, I believe, in each packet in an envelope. I will also request that the board members refrain from asking specific questions about information that is provided by that psychological evaluator, because the petitioner has not seen this evaluation and it will not be provided to him. There is a letter from the board in regards to that evaluator's recommendations that has been seen by petitioner, and you can ask questions in regards to the information presented in that cover letter. The sixth attachment is petitioner's verification of attending 12-step meetings, which he has done and submitted as required. The seventh attachment is a printout from the Pharmatech website. Pharmatech is the company that does the drug testing for the board, which indicates the petitioner has passed all of his drug tests. Attachment 8 is the notice of hearing. Attachment 9 is petitioner's registration history certification. And since petitioner does have the burden here, I have no further statements, but I will likely be asking him questions.
Okay, and I have before me a letter authored by Cynthia Heyer, for the record H-E-I-E-R, Cynthia C-Y-N-T-H-I-A, identifying herself as a psychotherapist, MAMFT, dated March 3, 2014. Do you wish this added as an exhibit, Mr. Meyer?
Sure.
Any objection?
No.
Okay, this letter will be Exhibit N, and I think, do board members have copies of this letter? Yes, they do. Okay. All right, and at this point, Mr. Meyer, this is your opportunity to address the board if you're so inclined. Do you wish to testify before the board in support of your petition?
Yes, sir.
All right, would you stand to be sworn, please? I solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you give in this proceeding shall be nothing but the truth. Seated. And once seated, would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Douglas James Meyer.
And you are the petitioner seeking a modification of probation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what would you like to tell the board in support of your petition?
It is my intention today to introduce myself to the board and submit evidence that I can operate safely and independently as a therapist. It would be ridiculous for me to not admit that I have had a problem with drugs and alcohol in the past. So I think we're past step one on that. But I really believe that I have a program in place that allows me to operate effectively as a therapist. So I guess the first thing I want to let you know is I have not been arrested in about 10 years, just shy, a couple months shy of 10 years. I originally got clean in September of '95 in a behavior modification program. And after a long period of sobriety, I had a spine surgery, and I was ill prepared for the pain, what would happen when I started taking the pain medication. And I had a relapse, and the last two convictions in 2004, which only happened a couple days apart, things come off the tracks quickly, but that is the result of that relapse. Since then, so prior to that relapse, I was employed in the finance industry, and what happened after the relapse is I went to get a job, and I would get the job, and for instance at Deloitte & Touche in San Francisco or UCSF, and they would do a background investigation, and it pretty much rendered my finance degree useless because nobody would hire me. They would hire me, and then during the probation period they would do a background investigation. So I decided to go back to school and get a graduate degree because I felt that this industry would be a little bit more forgiving of my past. And I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but here I am, and I'm way too far down the road to stop now. So I have accumulated a pretty good employment history. I work in Kaiser Psychiatry at Santa Clara. I work in both child psychiatry, and I work in the chemical dependency unit. I've also worked at Oakland Kaiser in the chemical dependency unit, as well as with troubled teens in the adolescent program. I also work at Alta Bates Summit Medical Center in Oakland on the 5th floor in an inpatient chemical dependency facility. So I also want to let you know that my sponsor's here today with me, and he's my second sponsor, and I rely on him heavily. And also my first sponsor and I just got back from, my first sponsor and I when I transferred to Santa Clara, I moved down to the coast, and I felt I needed somebody that I had more access to, and that that is why I have the second sponsor. But my first sponsor and I just got back from Europe, and we went to Paris and London, and we attended meetings in Paris. And so 12-step recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous are a big part of my life. And in addition, I would hope that the fact that I work in 2 chemical dependency units in hospitals would put the board's mind at ease as well, because it's also an additional level of supervision. And I think I have a pretty well-balanced program in place so that I can maintain sobriety, and I hope I can make you folks feel at ease with granting me this modification and possible termination down the road. So for today, I'm just asking for decrease in frequency of the psychotherapy, which I have a letter in support of, decrease in frequency of the urinalysis, which would help me. I mean, not only does it help me, I mean, you guys hear the financial, you hear the financial argument often, but also, you know, I can't really plan my day. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I have to call anyway. But it would be nice if I could go on with my day without having to go down and test. I have an 11 to 7 shift at the hospital currently, and I work 6 days at the hospital, and so it's really important for me to do a lot of the maintenance I like to do for my recovery in the morning, and sometimes 4 times a month is a little excessive. So there is a financial consideration there. In addition, I'm so used to going to AA meetings, I've requested that to terminate the requirement for the meeting attendance sheet. And one of the reasons is because I get to talk with people and I forget the thing, and then I have to go retrieve it. But the other thing is, I would hope that based on maybe talking to my sponsor and the fact that I'm around chemical dependency for the better part of every day, will put you at ease in that. And I guess that's about it for now. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Jansen, do you have questions?
Yes. In reading through your application, I became a bit confused about the dates. What is your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is 7/9/07. So, I had a little period of time where it was difficult for me to get off the pain medication, but once I had this surgery in 04, and it took me a couple years to get completely abstinent, and I've been abstinent since 7/9/07.
Okay, so when you say it took a couple years from your last conviction, right, in 2004? So from 2004, that conviction, and the 10 months of rehabilitation programs you were in, you were still using pain medication until July of 07, correct?
Not during the rehab programs, but subsequent to that, yes, I did use, not daily, but on occasion, enough to have to get a new sobriety date in July of 07.
Were you using anything else at that time, or was it strictly pain medication?
Yes, I mean, my history is I have a long history on the streets of Oakland, and I mean, I don't know how else to say that, but it was a long ride, and so once I relapsed, I went to a methadone clinic to try to detox, and that turned out to be the wrong thing. And I subsequently found out that the only way for me to do this is to protect against the first one.
Is it your testimony, you mentioned that you originally got clean in September of 1995.
Mhm.
Were you clean then until 2004?
Yes.
And then your relapse from that sobriety date was 2004, and that's when you got the final convictions?
Correct.
Okay. What can you tell the board has changed within yourself to assure them that you will remain clean and sober after such an extensive period of addiction?
Well, I mean, the main thing that's happened since the 2004 conviction is I have, you know, I've spent over 5 years of my life in drug treatment, over 5 years of my life, but none of it was really 12-step or spiritually based. As a matter of fact, the program that I went to in '95 that kept me clean for quite some time was a behavior modification it was a confrontational therapy in the Hearst Mansion in Berkeley, and they really didn't emphasize 12-step recovery or any kind of spiritual component. They really talked about structure and coping mechanisms, but they really didn't talk about spirituality and ego and humility and things like that. So what's happened in the last, I think, 6.5 years that has really helped me, that has given me peace, is a different approach to it, a 12-step approach, and a spiritual approach.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, board members, we'll go back to my right this time.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Meyer, so you're asking for a reduction in fluid testing, reduction in psychotherapy, and reduction of evidence of attending your thrice weekly support group, which is AA, correct? So what does that leave you then in probation terms? What would we have to monitor?
It leaves me 2 sessions a month of psychotherapy. It leaves me 2 random tests a month. It leaves me quarterly reports by both myself and my psychotherapist. It leaves me, of course, probation fees, and then I would hope that a step down in probation would mean an increase in my personal 12-step program. So I plan.
How does that work? Can you explain that to me? How would reducing probation?
I really would rely even more heavily on my 12-step program, my support group, my sponsor. Currently, I discuss a lot of things with my psychotherapist that quite possibly I could discuss more often with my sponsor, and so I would guess that I will step up my 12-step program in response to a step down in probation terms.
Okay. But you just don't want to have to be on the hook for reporting that you're doing it and providing sign-in sheets and that sort of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
Thank you.
How is eliminating the sign-in sheets helpful to you?
I guess I'm kind of absent-minded. One of the big components of 12-step recovery is fellowship. So it seems that I always get to talking with somebody and maybe talking with somebody who's brand new, maybe somebody I've known for a long time, and it slips my mind and I leave the sheet, and I have to go back to the meeting the following week and retrieve it. So that's the only issue.
You spoke in your report about how your job in some way helps you to remain clean and sober as well?
Yes.
So can you talk about how, like, if we were to reduce your analysis, how would your job sort of help support that?
Well, I think it supports it in many ways. In one way, there's all kinds of professionals around me, both at Kaiser and at Sutter, that are in recovery as well, that I can draw upon as resources. In addition, to work in a chemical dependency unit, if I were to be under the influence, it would not only I would lose my job, I would lose my career, I would lose everything, because it wouldn't be like in a child psychiatry unit where you could go out and have a couple drinks one night. People would recognize what was going on, and they have conditions that if in fact you're under the influence, you're immediately let go, and you can't come back for years, and most likely they would never hire you back. So I was just pointing out the initial. I was pointing out the extra incentive, and I was pointing out the fact that I'm around chemical dependency professionals all day, sometimes 6 days a week, and I guess that's why.
And if I had met you 5 years ago, how would I see a different person between that person and who you are now?
I think I was 5 years ago. I was probably much more restless. I mean, all my energy has been going into how do I get to a place of peace through psychotherapy, through yoga, meditation, all these practices that I have. I mean, I've just been trying to get to a place of more peace. And I think 5 years ago you would have noticed maybe a little bit of more restlessness.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Given how you feel now at the stage of recovery that you're at, if it were not for the psychotherapy frequency requirement, what would you just internally think is an appropriate, helpful psychotherapy frequency for you? How often would you want to be going to psychotherapy or need to be going?
I mean, a necessity, I like to go to psychotherapy. As a necessity, Cindy and I have had, she's my psychotherapist, we've had discussions surrounding this, and I think we both agree, I've seen her over 75 times. We both agreed that two times a month, that frequency is plenty as far as necessity. I mean, you know, a lot of times, I mean, a lot of you know how psychotherapy is. A lot of times we talk about balance. A lot of times we talk about concepts, you know, attachment, approval, things like that. And I think we can cover all that stuff in 2 sessions a month.
Are you still finding it helpful? I mean,
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Maher. Thank you for coming. I'm looking at your petition for modification of penalty. It's under attachment 1. And I'm looking at, I just want to clarify for myself that I understand. Question 12, you say you have attended a minimum of 3 meetings per week for many years. So you're talking about the 12-step meetings there?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And did you say that you continue to attend 3 meetings per week?
I think we're at about 5 right now.
5 meetings per week?
Right. I mean, I have a home group in the East Bay where I'm from, in Alameda. I have a home group in the South Bay where I work, and I have a home group on the coast where I live. I have a sponsor in the East Bay. I have a sponsor on the coast. So I'm exceeding expectations as far as meeting attendance.
And what kind of meetings are those? Are they big book meetings, speaker meetings?
Let's see. Speaker discussion in Alameda. It's on Park Street in Alameda. It's 6:30 in the morning. I do that before I go to work in Oakland. It's a mixed meeting. I go to a men's meeting at noon when I can that Steve attends as well. In Santa Cruz, I go to an old timers meeting in Santa Clara at St. Mark's on Prune Ridge on Thursday nights. And then probably what I would consider the one I frequent the most is the Land of the Medicine Buddha in SoCal, which has a meditation component.
Thank you.
Have you done psychotherapy before, apart from, this round?
I think it seems like I've always been in psychotherapy, but I for so much of my life I was for many years I was on a methadone clinic throughout my 20s, and they had a psychotherapy component in there that was a federal requirement. So that's kind of where I started going to psychotherapy. I think I've had 4 regular psychotherapists over the course of my life, long-term psychotherapists, and 3 of those sober. 1 while I was in the methadone clinic, which I don't really. 1 was while I was in the methadone clinic, which I don't consider being sober.
So is it, a licensed mental health person? Or
now, currently?
Those, previous 4 that you mentioned?
Yes. 2 MFTs, psychologists, 2 MFTs, a psychologist, and actually 3 MFTs.
So can you sum up quickly how many years of psychotherapy that you have gone through?
I mean, different frequency, not as frequently as I am now, but I'd say if we added them all together, we're probably looking at 4 years.
So you at certain answer and response time, you talk about if if your psychotherapy frequency would be reduced, then you would rather talk to your sponsor. Is that my correct understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So how does the 2 things benefit you? I'm trying to get a grip of what the difference is, when you talk with a psychotherapist versus a sponsor to you.
What is the difference?
Yes. How do they benefit you
1 is much
differently?
more expensive, and I should say this: my current sponsor is an LCSW, so we're talking about spiritual stuff, psychological stuff, all 12-step recovery stuff, and then real life balance in life stuff too. So I can cover a lot with my sponsor because I chose wisely.
You what?
I chose my sponsor wisely.
Oh.
In other words, I think I chose a sponsor who was not just 12-step based. I think he's more holistic in nature.
So one of my other question. So how about, apart from your sponsor, one here and the other LCSW, who are your support network? I know that you talk about you have a men's group, but when we're talking about closer, say like, families or, any, relationship that is closer, that you can actually, go and ask favors and rely on, knowing that, they would not leave you, whatever. So describe, please.
So in addition to sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, my son lives right here in Davis, and he's getting ready to graduate from Sacramento State, and so I'm really proud of that. So, but anyway, he is a really good source for me. Also, I've managed to retain a whole bunch of my childhood friends from the East Bay. You know, and where I grew up, many of them, there was a lot of drug and alcohol problems in my neighborhood, and you know, those guys from elementary school and high school, I still have great relationships with them today, and I don't think, and they have never judged me. They have never judged me. I could call them and ask them for help today. So I think I have quite a few childhood friends. I don't have much family to speak of, other than my son. You know, short of turning this into a therapy session, I was born in the orphanage in San Francisco, and then adopted, moved over to the East Bay, and I ended up wandering around Oakland aimlessly. Attachment issues, right? And then it turns out after I got some help that I found out I could be a perfectly productive member of society. I just never knew really how to do it. And now I think I'm a really good source of showing others how to do it.
It was not meant to be a psychotherapy question, by the way.
That's automatically where I go.
Okay. Just a brief question. You indicated in your opening comments that you had in place a program to help you maintain sobriety. And before any questions were asked, you indicated that. And while you're speaking, I just said, wow, this is really nice. You have a program, plus we have a program. How did you reach the point where you could make that statement when you're talking about picking pieces out of an existing program?
I'm willing to comply with whatever the board, it's been thousands and thousands of dollars, many, many hours, and I'm willing to comply with anything in order to move toward licensing. So my intention is not to discount what you think might keep the public safe, right? My intention is to make myself a more healthy individual so that I can provide better services. And I think by cutting back on some of these terms, I can keep myself healthier. And by substituting other things, so I don't mean to. If that's what you mean, Dr. Douglas, that I'm in any way contending, that I'm being contentious as far as your terms.
No, that's not my question. You've made a decision. You've come to us and said, I have something in place. And you're right, you have something in place. But you personally made a decision that you wanted to eliminate 3 of those support structures.
I did. And I thought we'd start there, and I thought one of the best things I could do, based on what you see on paper, is for me to come introduce myself to you. And so that you, a lot of times when you see a record like mine, it's really difficult to get past the paperwork, right? So so I wanted to present evidence to let the board know that I think I'm moving in the right direction, and I'm safe to practice. You know, I work with at Kaiser Santa Clara. I work with troubled teens. I work with adult chemical dependency, and I also work with recently hospitalized high school suicide attempts. So I've been given a lot of autonomy and a lot of responsibility there. So at my places of employment, I think people are, and I have letters to corroborate that, but I've made a decision to approach you guys just to let you know who I am, and hopefully you'll back off on some of these requirements so that I can be, it will help me financially, and I think it'll help me gain a sense of peace more.
Thank you.
Currently, what step are you on?
It's an interesting question because so many sponsors feel like you only need to do it once, and then other sponsors feel like you need to. I could say this: I'm not actively working the steps. I've worked the steps numerous times, both in Narcotics Anonymous and in Alcoholics Anonymous. I do attend book study meetings, so and also I reference the books all the time and the steps all the time with the patients that I deal with. So the answer to that question is I'm not actively working on one step because I try to look at them as a whole system.
You also mentioned earlier someone asked the question why you wanted to terminate the responsibility for making sure that you were at the meetings.
Right.
And your comment was, or your testimony was, that you're kind of have a absent-minded kind of persuasion, and that going back and getting those is somewhat difficult to you?
Well, because many of them happen only once a week, so you have to go back the following week. And anyway, yes, I am absent-minded, and yes, I do get to talking with people.
So my question is, do you have if that's why you would like to eliminate it, do you feel that it's not the requirement that's been put on by the board is not one that is the responsibility that we're hoping that you embrace by going to these meetings and getting it signed off for that reason is important?
I'm hoping that I can present evidence that I go to those anyway, and that so that was my intention. I had no, I mean, it's just part of my life. So I mean, do I think it's important that I go to meetings? It's so important that I think it's actually making me think about where I want to live, where the best Alcoholics Anonymous community is now. So yes, I do think it's important. I was merely trying to pare down some of these responsibilities. I mean,
I guess that's my question. I'm hearing that you say that it's a responsible act to perform the AA meetings.
Right.
And the proof of those AA meetings doesn't sound like it's important.
To tell you the truth, if it's that big of a deal, I mean, I'll continue to do it. I was under the impression that I would, by bringing my sponsor and presenting some of this evidence and showing you 15 months of, and the fact that I work at chemical dependency, that it might suffice as far as that requirement. But to tell you the truth, I didn't know it would spark such discussion.
So you see it as a redundancy?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. So I heard you say that, well, let me clarify. You're still motivated to get your MFT license, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's your goal, is to practice as a licensed MFT. It sounded when you were talking about coming out of the financial world that that door was being closed because of your background. And I almost heard you say that you thought that it would be a perhaps something that was more doable for you to go into a therapeutic practice.
That's what I said.
So it was kind of a practical decision.
I think it was, you know, at the time, doors were closed to me, and yeah, there was some practicality, and at some point I thought, you know, what do you think you're good at? Or what do you think you know a lot about? And who do you think you can help? And since if I know anything about its treatment as far as drugs and alcohol, because it's been such a huge part of my life.
So it sounds like your motivation may have shifted over the years.
Initially, I needed a job, but I've always been, whether it's been Alcoholics Anonymous or in a drug treatment center, I've always been interested in helping the person who thinks it's hopeless.
So is being a therapist more than than just a job at the present time?
Yes. I really like to go to work. Lately, I really like a mix. Lately, I really like some adult chemical dependency, some child psychiatry with recently hospitalized kids, and then some troubled adolescent teens who are in trouble with the law. So lately, I really like a mix. To tell you the truth, all-day adult chemical dependency might wear on me a little bit. So my supervisor knows that, and we practice self-care, and my supervisor allows me some, she gives me a good mix of activities.
Okay. I have one more question. All the therapy that you've done, has it led you to some insight, something that you feel comfortable sharing?
I mean, if you're talking about my core issue, it definitely has to do with attachment, approval, things like that. If you're talking about my core issue, it has to do with, do I want to share something personal?
I was kind of more looking at the fact that you've done a lot of therapy.
Lots.
And I've heard lots of behavioral things that you've changed.
Right.
And you're talking a lot about a lot of behavioral things, which is good, but I just wondered if over the years of therapy that you'd gained some insight that has helped you in your recovery process.
I think the biggest insight that I've gained is I think a lot of my problems were behind seeking approval.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. How far along are you in the licensure process?
I think I'm in the queue for the exam. I mean, I had to. It was a long court process to get this far. I talked with Debbie Flewellen, and I'm in the queue for the exam. But I mean, that could be I've been told that could be a 9-month waiting process.
What do you mean in the queue? So you've submitted your hours?
I submitted the hours in the application. Correct.
Oh, you're pretty on the fast track. Your intern number was given in November of 2012. Is that right?
Correct.
So in a year and something, in a year you got all your hours?
Okay, I submitted the hours. Based on Debbie's recommendation, I submitted the application, and because of the long wait, she said I could submit the rest of them after.
I see. Okay. Very impressive. So I wanted to ask about what was your reaction when you were put on the probation and all these conditions were imposed upon you?
Well, I mean, I knew there would be a possibility, right? I mean, I knew it's been an issue for quite some time. What was my reaction? I called Miss Madsen. I said, my last conviction was 10 years ago. Is there any way we can get around this? I mean, I seem to have a good, and it turns out after my attorney went round and round with the Attorney General's office, I got exactly what everybody else gets. So I guess my reaction was disappointment and a sense of I still have quite a long road to go. And but I'm up for the task. I mean, I've come this far, so yeah, I was disappointed, but I just did the next thing I was supposed to do. You know, I just listened to what my attorney said, and I just did the next thing.
You also mentioned that you go to yoga, and you, of course, do the meetings, and you do other things which you see as supporting you in your process as you're moving forward. Do you think that these conditions of probation are in the same category of things that are helping you move forward, or you are seeing them as a hindrance?
I mean, I guess they help me to some extent, and I think then at some point they probably become detrimental. I don't know what that point is. I'm just I don't know when that point is. I'm just saying that since the tests are random, I still have to call in every day. I'm just trying to avoid the financial loss. So is it an obstacle to my recovery? I mean, I guess the probation is an additional deterrent. But the thing about the way my history has gone with drugs and alcohol, that at this point it's really clear what happens. And so I think it helps to some extent, but I think at some point it becomes excessive. I think it helps to some extent, and then I think at some point it's a little excessive.
And one last question. Are you a sponsor to somebody?
No, not currently.
Have you ever been?
Yes, but not currently.
Thank you.
I wanted to go back to something you said that I'm not sure what you meant by. You said when you gave up on your financial career and decided to go into mental health, that you didn't know what you were getting yourself into. What did you mean by that?
I meant that I didn't know how the board was going to react. I thought the board would be, like I said, I thought the board would be much more forgiving as far as looking at people and the fact that they can change because that's what we do for a living, right? So that's really what I meant. I was under the impression that, I guess my line of reasoning was, I was under the impression that because of the nature of counseling and therapy, that the board would believe that people can change and move them in that direction, much more so than a financial services company.
Yes, probably so. But in the meantime, you understand that there's our primary concern is for public safety.
I understand that.
So whereas on an individual basis, we might, any one of us say, yeah, you've come a long ways. There's that extra obligation that we have to others.
I understand.
Thank you for coming. And I only have a very minor question. By the way, I think you represent yourself well. The minor question is about the AA meeting requirements. We all more or less get forgetful sometimes. So if you're going to meeting 5 times a week, would it be too much to ask if you can get documentation for at least 2 meetings instead of like whatever number? Do you think you can handle that?
No, that wouldn't be too much to ask. So I can do that.
I mean, you know, would you be able to get documentation for attending 2 of the 5 meetings, AA meetings?
Yes, sir, I can.
Thank you.
Any further questions by board members? Yes.
I'm very curious about your submission of, to apply for your license. So what information that you have submitted to the board to make yourself eligible for examination?
Okay, I had completed all my hours, and then my hours were all completed since graduation. And then when I got the order for the revocation order, and they finally gave me the intern number in last November, they told me I had to start my hours all over again. So I did, and in the meantime, I was accumulating the hours, and as a matter of fact, I think I should have the full amount of hours right now. But what I did was I submitted the application with short a couple hundred hours so that I could get in the queue, and that way when the evaluator looked at it, I could submit the remainder of them. Because I was reading the website and it said it's a 9-month wait to take the exam.
So your supervisor sign off your hours, sign off the plan and sign off, verified your supervision hours?
She signs my supervision hours, yes.
And you were licensed. When did you first get your license again?
I don't have a license.
No, your registration number.
11/8. Is that right? 11/8.
So November 2008.
No, 11/8/12.
11/8/12. So it's November 2012.
Correct.
Okay, so it's about 16 months
16
from now.
months, right.
Okay. So, okay. All right. I have no further questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any further board questions? No? Ms. Jansen, any further questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, sir, you mentioned somebody, a sponsor, somebody.
Yes.
Did you wish to call a witness? Sure. Yes, I do. So would you remain standing, raise your right hand to be sworn, please? Do solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this proceeding? Nothing but the truth. And once seated, would you state your name for the record?
My name is Steve Evan Macy.
How do you spell the, was that 2 last names or?
No, Steve Evan, Macy, like the store.
Okay. Do you wish to ask Mr. Macy questions or just have him testify in what we call the narrative about his? Why don't you move up towards the mic, please? Thank you.
I guess no. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on my operating safely and independently as a therapist, and I'm wondering if you can give the board any insight into what my program of recovery looks like.
Okay. So, let's see how I want to answer this. I guess I'll just answer them in order. Not working with Doug, it's hard for me to describe how he would be as an employee. Being a sponsor, being a confidant, I have lots of information about, while we maintain complete confidentiality, talking in a general way about what goes on job sites. Don't want to jeopardize my own license. Have a general idea of how he interacts with his clients and his supervisors and his peers at his job. I would say it's much like many of us interact with our jobs. Given that it's a psychotherapeutic job, interacting with the clients comes with all those difficulties, and interacting with the supervisors. So I get that information, and I would say that you do it in a responsible, respectful, and ethical manner, given what I know, what are the standards of this board. So that's what I would say about that. I think you have a clear understanding about how to develop empathy with the clients and relate well with them, whether it's the adolescent chemical dependency unit, some of the more seriously psychologically affected youth, the suicidal youth, or the adults in the chemical dependency, that your experience and education allows you to interact with them well and be helpful. Speaking to the recovery end, this woman, Miss Pines, is very interested in what step various people in recovery are working. And Doug answered it fairly well, that it depends on the person about how they're working through their process. But I would speak for Doug and say that he, on a daily basis, works the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps. Would be continually self-examining, continuing to work on building a spiritual program, and also carrying the message, which would be the 10th, 11th, and 12th step. So I would speak to that. Sometimes we forget what we're doing; it becomes so rote that this is how we live our lives. And then I would say that Doug has developed an eclectic program. I mean, if you read literature about relapse and relapse prevention, the last thing that happens in a relapse is taking the drink or drug. The first thing that happens in recovery is stopping taking the drink or the drug. Then there's everything in between. Many people get stuck in meetings. That's all they do is go to meetings. There are other people who can build a rather wide array of activities that become your life, and what non-alcoholics don't even think about. But for us, sometimes, given from where we come from and how we've chosen to spend much of our lives, we have to consciously build a life of education, goals, trying to get licensed, having jobs, showing up, vacations, taking music lessons, studying meditation, studying Eastern philosophy or many other philosophies. So life and family, and it just we just go on and on and on. I think it's important for recovering people to be conscious and be awake of those of those things, and I think Doug does a great job of that. So I think I spoke. I think I answered your questions. The only other thing that I'd like to say is just a brief statement how much I respect this board as a licensed person. I understand that somebody needs to be in charge of maintaining the ethics and the values that we have to prove that we're able to achieve to become licensed. What I would also hope, I think Doug spoke to it a little bit, that hoping that in this profession, this is a place where we know lives can change, and people at their very base nature can shift and become different people. I hope that it isn't an ethic or a value of this board that once somebody has established themselves as a criminal or a drug addict or a domestic violence or whatever the issue might be that might bring them to this board, that indeed they can change. And then what we're looking for here is a decrease in the terms of probation. We're not asking to be cut loose completely. I think part of the idea is to eventually move forward and be able to be without probation and be able to not only live your life but practice your profession freely and well. And so I think that Doug has earned, and that the board would look favorably upon him to kind of little by little, like we do with our children, just release them into the world. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Anything
for
else
me?
you wish the witness to cover? Any questions you have?
Yes, thank you. You hold a license with the board as a LCSW?
Yes.
And you also provided a recommendation letter to this board, is
Yes,
that
I
correct?
did.
Okay. How long have you known Petitioner?
I've known Doug for 4 or 5 years, and we've been working closely together for the last year and a half.
And are you confident that he will be able to remain sober and stay on his plan?
Well, I mean, I heard the word assured here used several times. What can we do to assure that someone won't? There are no guarantees. I'm 30 years sober myself, so there are no guarantees. What I can assure you is that Doug will do on a daily basis to maintain his sobriety to the best of his ability.
How many individuals have you sponsored?
In the course of my sobriety, maybe, I'll say 30. I'll say 1 a year.
So you're a pretty experienced sponsor.
Yes.
And with that experience and with your knowledge and information of Mr. Meyer, you feel that the reduction in requirements that he has requested here today is in his best interest?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Okay. Board members?
Thank you. I really appreciate your opinion on Mr. Meyer. And just for the record, could you just tell us 2 or 3 sentences your qualifications?
Prior to qualifications, what was your desire?
As related to your opinion, why is it your opinion worthwhile?
Why is my opinion worthwhile?
I mean, your opinion that we should take your...
Oh, why should you take me seriously? Good question. Good question, Doctor. Why should you accept my opinion as valid? I suppose for the same reasons that we would accept your opinions as valid. I mean, I've done my work. I'm a validated member of this society, of this community, of the psychotherapy community. I pay attention. There also is, I think, there is. I also just believe Doug. I just believe him. I watched him walk the talk, as we say. And as far as my own validation goes, I think you could talk to 100 people and ask them why you should validate my opinion, and I'll say 84 of them will say because I can be trusted. So.
Just to follow up, actually, I tried to be helpful. Just for the record, like for example, you told us you've been in AA with 30 years sobriety, and you're a licensed therapist. So is that kind of answer I'm looking for?
Well, I'm a licensed therapist by the state of California, LCSW. I work for Santa Cruz County Mental Health, specifically for children's mental health. I've been employed there for going on 14 years. Prior to that, I worked for Santa Cruz Community Counseling Center, which is a contract agency for the county that does a myriad of different counseling and psychotherapy and social services for the county. I specifically worked for a drug treatment facility called Sunflower House, and we also had Si Se Puede, which is a Si Se Puede? Si Se Puede? Spanish for if you know President Obama, he picked up that. So it's a program for Latinos in Watsonville. So so I worked. I'm approaching 25 years that I've been in the field. So so I'm not only I think in not only in recovery. I think in recovery these days there's what they call consumer employees is a phrase where especially in the mental health field where there are clients who come in who get better and then start working for the same agency. A long time ago, when I started working in treatment and co-ed alcohol and drug treatment for adults, I thought that the best combination would not just be somebody who was recovering themselves, but then somebody who also was traditionally educated. And then I proceeded to do that through while raising a family. It took me a long time. So I have become that recovering person who also is traditionally educated and continues to participate in his own recovery. So does
Thank
that
you.
validate me, Doctor? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
When you were asked if you thought it was in Mr. Meyer's best interest to do the reduction of what he's asked for, do you think it's in the consumer's best interest?
Yes.
Any other board questions for this witness? Okay. Anything else you wish to present in support of your petition? Okay, then the matter is submitted. The record is closed. Off the record, you heard what I said to the earlier petitioners about what the board is going to do, executive session, decide the matter, mail you the decision. You heard all that? Okay. Any questions about the process from this point forward? Okay. Thank you for appearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to break for lunch. What do you think is a good time to come back, Kim? Okay, 1:15. Okay, so that gives you an hour and 10 minutes. Ready? Okay, we're back on the record. Oh, sort of. We're back.
Ms. Weeks?
Hi.
Okay.
Yes.
You're going to represent yourself today?
I am. Good.
Okay. Ms. Alamo Latif, are you ready?
Yes.
Jody, ready? Okay, on the record, in the final petition today, the petition for modification of probation filed by Jennifer Weeks. This matter bears Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2014-010919, agency number MF-2011-227. My name is Carl Engemann, Administrative Law Judge, sitting with the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and as I've said in previous matters, I'm not going to ask the board members to identify themselves. They identified themselves in the first matter today on the record. For the record, all of the board members remain present. And Ms. Alamo Latif, would you state your appearance for the record, please?
Stephanie Alamo Latif, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General, pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 and Business and Professions Code Section 4990.30. My role is not adversarial, but intended to protect the public interest, and I'm here to assist the panel in fact-finding. I'm here to ensure that the panel has adequate information for which to make a decision.
Thank you. And Ms. Weeks identified herself while we're off the record, and I think you told me, did you tell me you intend to represent yourself today?
Correct.
Okay, and did you understand, as I explained to the earlier petitioners, that had you wished and at your own expense, you could have been represented by a lawyer in these proceedings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're going to follow, were you present during one or more of the earlier petitions?
All of them.
Okay, then we're going to follow the same process, and I'm going to ask Ms. Alamo Latif to begin with essentially a summary of the background of this case.
Yes, Your Honor. The board issued petitioner a marriage and family therapist license. Sure. The board issued petitioner a marriage and family therapist license on June 6, 2009. The license expires on September 30th, 2014, and is on probation for 5 years. On September 7th, 2010, petitioner was convicted of a misdemeanor violation of Health and Safety Code Section 11550, Subdivision A, which is being under the influence of a controlled substance, methamphetamine. On January 25th, 2011, petitioner was convicted of a misdemeanor violation of Health and Safety Code Section 11550, Subdivision A, under the influence of a controlled substance, meth. An accusation was filed on November 17, 2011, due to the misdemeanor convictions of being under the influence of methamphetamine. In addition, the board found cause for discipline for illegal possession and self-administration of a controlled substance and violating the provisions of the Marriage and Family Therapist Act. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement to revoke her license effective September 13, 2012. The revocation was stayed and her license was placed on probation for 5 years with optional and standard terms and conditions. Petitioner is currently in compliance with all of her probation requirements and has submitted her quarterly reports consistently and in a timely manner. She has successfully completed the psychological evaluation and cost recovery conditions, paying the full cost recovery amount of $2,405. All of Petitioner's biological fluid testing has been negative, and she has paid thus far $1,200 of the cost for probation monitoring. Petitioner is requesting modification of her probation by a reduction in the frequency of biological fluid testing and elimination of weekly supervision. Because the burden is on Petitioner, I have no further statements, but would reserve the right to question the Petitioner. Thank you.
Okay, and is it your wish at this point to offer the petition? And I think there are, let me see if I get this right this time, 10 attachments to the petition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and are you going to have any objection to any of these documents? These are your petition and the documents that support your petition. Are you going to have any objection to my receiving them in evidence?
No, sir.
Okay, so they'll all be received in evidence, and Ms. Alamo-Latif, would you like to describe them for the record?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Exhibit number 1 is the petition for modification of probation, along with the attachments in support of her request. Exhibit number 2 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order in the matter of the accusation against Jennifer Stein, effective September 13, 2012, with the attached underlying accusation. Exhibit number 3 is the quarterly probation reports covering September 2012 through January 7, 2014, which were prepared by Petitioner. Exhibit number 4 are quarterly reports covering October 2012 through January 5, 2014, which were prepared by Petitioner's psychotherapist. Exhibit number 5 are quarterly reports covering January 2013 through January 2014, prepared by Petitioner's supervisor. Exhibit number 6 is a psychological evaluation and results. Exhibit number 7 is a cost recovery completion letter. Exhibit number 8 are the biological fluid test results. Exhibit number 9 is the notice of hearing. And exhibit number 10 is the license history certification for Marriage and Family Therapist license number MFC 47271.
Okay, thank you. As I noted earlier, all those are received in evidence. So does that complete your presentation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Weeks, you told me that you saw the earlier cases, so I think you know that this is now your opportunity to address the board. Do you wish to do so?
Yes, I do.
All right. Would you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you shall give in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And I think you know that even those of us who have a voice that is normally heard from 40 yards away have had trouble, I guess, being adequately recorded. And I note that you have a very soft voice, so we may have some real problems here.
No,
So
I can speak loudly.
okay, do try to project to the far corners of the room. Okay, go ahead. What would you like to tell the board?
Is that a good volume? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I realize that I'm here as a result of the way that I was conducting myself in my life, and it was a short time. It was a relatively short time that I was having trouble, but I was having trouble, and I think ironically, because of, ironically, it was because I wasn't availing myself of the professional supports and community supports available to me. I say ironically, obviously, because of my career and as my honor to be a therapist and work in the, as a clinician and work in the helping profession. It's something I take a great deal in pride of. I have always, except for that dark time in my life, conducted myself with what I'd like to think is a great amount of integrity and walk with dignity, and I'm not proud of what happened, but I certainly have learned from it. It's feel emotional, but I think that, I guess all I want to say is, so I'm obviously here today to ask for a modification of my probation, and I'm not asking for a modification on my therapy sessions, which I'm ordered to do weekly, which I will do whether it's reduced or not. That's something that I feel has been extremely beneficial to me, and I will continue to do that. I did write, you'll see in the in my written, this is different. In my written request, I asked for elimination of supervision and reduction of frequency of my biological fluid, the drug testing. But upon further reflection, I would like to request a reverse in that request, I guess. So I think what would make more sense for me is to ask for a reduction of supervision or elimination and elimination of the drug testing. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking for the modifications for me is for twofold. One, and I hate to be repetitive, everybody else who went before me talked about financial issues. The drug testing, the drug testing is a big issue for me because, not because I have an issue doing it, but because there's actually not a test site in the city I live. So I have been able to adhere to this stipulation because it is a huge priority for me. It's also, the closest site to test is 35 miles from where I live. So it's been really, it's been hard. So, and I have designed a program, a structured, accountable program for myself. I do have a lot of sets of eyes on me. I work 3 days a week at a private hospital in a drug and alcohol treatment program with licensed professionals, my own supervisor, my supervisor's supervisor, colleagues who are both licensed and in recovery. My life is very transparent, and I think it would be quickly evident to all who know me. And I've asked for it to be that way. I've told my truth. I got in front of my story and told everybody around me what had happened. So I don't think the drug testing is necessarily necessary. So I'll just say that. I have benefited from the supervision. I've learned the importance of working with a colleague and processing countertransference, transference issues and such. And I guess the only other thing I would want to say is, although I would never want to repeat this process that got me here today, I certainly do believe that all I can ever offer a client or anybody is my highest level of self-awareness, my highest consciousness, and I certainly have grown as a person, as a clinician from this process. Not that I would choose to have done it this way, but that's the positive that's come out of it. I guess that's all.
Okay, Ms. Alamo-Latif, you have questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weeks, how do you feel about the behavior that led to you being disciplined by the board?
About my behavior, I'm ashamed of it. I feel that the disciplinary action is and was completely justified.
Okay. And when did you first begin using methamphetamine or other controlled substances?
Very beginning of September of 2010. I'll just very briefly say that I found myself in a situation the likes of which I never could have. The enormity of the situation was something I wasn't prepared to deal with, and I did everything. I didn't deal with it well. The stress of that situation and the stress led me to pick that up.
And had you, prior to September of 2010, had you used meth or drugs, controlled substances before that ever?
In my late teens, to maybe early 20, in 1997, I went to drug rehab and had never used anything, never used meth or controlled substances again since then.
So you were clean and sober from about 97 until 2010?
I was clean and sober completely until I had my child in 2004, and then I was prescribed painkiller, which I used maybe for a week, but I claimed a new sobriety date of that, which would have been the end of June of 2004. So since June of 2004.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And what were the circumstances that led to your relapse in 2010?
So my husband, my husband had been clean and sober, and he relapsed. And when he relapsed, he relapsed and he got arrested, and it was really, he was arrested, and the police, I found myself in the middle of involvement with the police because of the circumstances. I wasn't involved directly, but we were living together, my daughter, his two daughters, and the two of us, and they came to the house and they explained the situation, and they directly told me not to speak of it, not to tell anybody about it, and to keep it quiet or his safety would be compromised. And so I did, and that was what I did wrong. I didn't seek counsel. I was scared.
So your husband's relapse and his drug use influenced you to relapse?
Eventually.
Okay. And are you still with your husband?
Yes, I am.
And what's the status of his sobriety?
He has 3 years sober, just shy of 3 years.
Great. And did you, during that time in 2010, did you ever go to work, your job, under the influence?
Yes, I did.
Did you see patients under the influence?
Yes, I did.
And how do you believe that had a negative effect on your patients?
I mean, I feel like it would be just ignorant to say no. But that's a hard question. I don't think so. And I am grateful. I'm grateful that I did that. I'm grateful that I was arrested, because I hate to think that something could have happened, that there was potential harm to my clients. There was potential harm. Yes, absolutely potential.
And since your convictions, have you participated in any drug treatment programs other than the court-ordered drug diversion program?
Yes, I have.
And which ones have those been?
So the court-ordered drug diversion program, and I wanted to just clarify that, and maybe it's not necessary, but the dates that were spoken, convictions in September and in January, but to my recollection, I pled no contest in September and in November. So it wasn't up till, maybe that's when it went through. I'm not sure if I'm speaking, I guess you'll tell me if I'm not being loud enough, but it was November. That's important to me to clarify. It wasn't as long into January.
Okay.
And then, so I did seek therapy right away. I'm sure that I was in therapy at least, I'm at the furthest out by January of 2011. I think I started earlier. I think I started like December of 2010. So well before that was a stipulation. I knew I needed that for my codependency, as it were. And so that is something I sought by myself right away and will continue to do. I did resume going to 12-step AA meetings and working with a sponsor and the PC 1000 drug diversion.
And are you still currently going to AA meetings?
5 days a week.
And what step are you in?
Well, we work 10, 11, 12 on a daily maintenance basis.
And do you participate in any other support groups other than AA?
I go to Al-Anon also. Yeah, which maybe is even more important.
Okay. And do you have a sponsor?
I do.
And do you meet with that sponsor frequently?
Once a week.
Once a week?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you maintain your sobriety today?
By making it my number 1 priority. Believing that, I know that if I lose my sobriety, my sobriety has to be my number 1 priority. And if I think anything comes before that, I'll probably lose that thing anyway. That is for sure. I could have lost my license. That would have been devastating. I could have lost, things that are truly irreplaceable, which is hard to think about. On a daily basis, I get up and I have like a meditation ritual I do in the morning. Like I said, meetings 5 days a week, a lot of coping skills that I've learned. Exercise has been really important. Taking care of myself first, even though I do have, kids and 3 job sites that I work at and a 45-minute commute. There's lots of things that could keep me from taking care of myself first, but I've learned that being selfish is not that. It's taking care of myself so I can be there for everyone else.
And what is your current support network?
So professional supports, my therapist and my court or my board-appointed supervisor, but my therapist, my sponsor, my husband, my parents, my ex-husband, actually my daughter's father is a huge support person and someone who's known me most of my life, so knows me on a level that's deeper than most people in my life. And he's somebody who has, he actually just got 10 years of sobriety on February 14th, so he's somebody I could talk to and call like at 2 a.m. if I needed to.
And how do you currently handle stress?
By breathing deeply. And so I moved myself out of my hometown of Santa Barbara, and I found a property in Lompoc after all this happened to make a new start. And even though I created the stress of the commute, it also has actually been a gift to have that quiet time, especially after work. And then on the way back with my daughter, just listening to her talk, and that's our time. And what was the question? How do I handle stress? Yeah, and getting to sleep on time, just the basics. I think I got away from the super basics of getting enough sleep, eating right, being healthy, talking about my problems, not feeling scared anymore. Like what happened to me was the result of a lot of fear that I bought into that wasn't actually real, but I believed it to be. And I think the base of a lot of my using was fear-based, and so seeing that for what it is.
Thank you. Do you have a relapse prevention program or plan?
Well, there's a lot of what-ifs that I've thought about, possible case scenarios that probably none would ever happen, but my relapse prevention plan, by definition of what got me in this situation to begin with, it mostly has to do with boundaries. Being able to say no, being able to say you need to leave, being able to say I need to leave, being able to set boundaries. That's what I didn't do, and that's what I would do if I was triggered by that type of situation.
Thank you. And why do you believe you would not repeat the same conduct today?
Because I know how to ask for help. I know that even though I'm a strong person, that I think the strongest people ask for help. Why do I think I wouldn't? I think my priorities are in line. I think my priorities were not in line, and I've realigned what my priorities are: myself, my sobriety, my daughter, my license, etc. And I think everybody knows what's going on in my life, what happened, all my coworkers, colleagues, family, and nobody knew anything before. I kept everything a secret. So it'd be very easy for me to ask for help, whereas before there had been so much that happened, I didn't know where to start.
And what kind of work have you done since your license has been placed on probation?
On myself or for work? For work?
Yes, correct.
So I've worked at Cottage Residential Center, which is a residential treatment program. I've worked there for over a decade. I've continued to work there as a primary case manager. I do group therapy, family therapy, couples, individual. I have a private practice in Santa Barbara, and I have a private practice in Solvang.
And you have indicated today that you wanted to kind of switch your requests around, and instead of eliminating the supervision, you'd like to reduce the supervision, and vice versa, you want to eliminate the biological fluid testing. Why is that?
So as I tried to articulate before, because the supervision, I think I probably would be, as you'll see in all the documentation that people have written for me, consistently says they believe I'm safe to practice, fit to practice with the public. My supervisor, therapist, the test the psychological test, etc. But I actually have enjoyed that and benefited from it. I think it makes me a better clinician to be in a defined situation where that's what we're doing, as I'm talking about my clients and getting feedback and asking for. I think that makes me a better clinician, really. It's a financial burden, but it's not as much of a financial burden and scheduling hardship, and I have to drive. Like I said, there's not a test site in the city where I live, so it's been extraordinarily trying to make that part of it work. That's the primary reason. It's really hard.
Okay, so specifically to the biological fluid testing, you have been clean and sober since probably about 3 years now. Would you, understandably, the board is a bit concerned and maybe concerned that you may have a relapse, so the biological fluid testing is very important. Would you be willing to do a reduction in the biological fluid testing than what you're doing now?
Of course.
So how many times a month are you doing now?
Now?
Yes.
It's random testing, I believe it's 5 times a month. It's either worded up to 5, it's definitely 5 times a month. 5 times a month.
Okay. And why do you believe that the supervision requirement should be eliminated?
Gosh. I think I'm a very effective therapist. I don't think that's ever been an issue. I can always improve. I do work in a treatment team setting 3 days a week and have esteemed colleagues to talk with and bounce things off of and offer and receive feedback. I don't want to sit here and say, I don't think I need it. I mean, of course I can improve. My thinking was because I never had a client complaint or a consumer complaint or anything happen like that, although there was absolutely the potential and the action is completely justified. I hope that I've proven myself that is not any kind of a current issue or a potential issue.
Okay, and I believe, sorry, I had misspoke. You changed it. You're actually asking not elimination of the supervision for reduction. So how often are you supervised now?
Once a week.
Once a week?
Yeah.
And what are you requesting a reduction to?
If I could request that, I would like to meet with her once a month.
Once a month? And you agreed to the probation terms in your stipulated settlement, so why should the board now agree to modify these terms?
Because I think I've done a stellar job adhering to them. I hope that what I'd like, because I think I've done I think that I've created for myself the accountability and structure in my life that the stipulations I'm assuming are designed to provide me so that I can continue to be of service publicly. So I'm hoping that I can show that I've done that and surpassed that today.
And what assurances can you give the board that you will not violate any laws in the future and that you won't relapse again?
Up until this, I've never had anything more than a traffic ticket in my life, ever. Being arrested was just not, I've never had any trouble with the law before. Moving violations in my vehicle have been the extent of my encounters with police officers. This was a time in my life that I'd like to think I've shut the door on. I couldn't have imagined that piece of it ever happening to me, and I know that I've put in place the safeguards to ensure that this would never happen again.
And is there anything else you'd like to tell the board?
That I can think of right now.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, board questions. Let's see. I think we're back down this side. Yes, Doctor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks for coming, and I admire your courage and determination, and by all accounts, you've been a very good therapist. I just would like to ask you a few questions. You mentioned about the boundaries issue, and if I understand it correctly, the relapse in 2001 has something to do with your then boyfriend using drug, and you started to use drug again. Am I right about that?
In 2010?
2010, yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I just want to establish the fact that in 2010, the fact that you had a relapse is because your boyfriend at that time living with you, now is your husband, started using drug, and that was a major triggering event. Is that correct?
Sorry, yes. It was because of the circumstances that surrounded his using drugs, because of everything that happened after that. Looking back, what I should have done is right at that time said, I love you, bye-bye, I hope you can get yourself together, and if so, come back. But because of the police involvement surrounding that, and I'm not blaming, it wasn't even with him. I picked up something because of how stressed I am. He never would have allowed that to happen knowingly. But yeah, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't their fault. But I did that.
Yeah. So then my question now is, now he's your husband and you love each other, and in terms of, in your mind, at least the way I read the record is that if he uses drug again, either you would leave or you would kick him out. Am I understanding correctly in reading through the records?
Yeah. He would leave.
I just feel like, you can say that, but how easy it is. That's why I said if you're determined to do that, but it's still not easy to do. And that time without what we're trying to do here, that is, like what if your husband is using drug again, and then if we drop the testing program altogether, so I just need assurance from you how, in your mind, how you're going to deal with that issue again.
Absolutely. That, I suppose that ties directly into my, what's the word I'm looking for? Not even intention, my commitment to follow through and continue with my personal individual therapy. To that end, I recognize that my codependent tendencies and not being able to separate, at that time is exactly what got me loaded. That's why I picked up drugs, and I can't allow that I can't allow myself to succumb to that kind of pressure and stress again. I'm very aware statistically that potentially he might relapse, and potentially I might relapse. But focusing on your question, should he relapse, that's exactly why I've strengthened my will and become, centered again in myself, so that I wouldn't allow that to happen. I do tend to learn from my mistakes, and does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
I just have a multiple choice question. If you had, you now have personal therapy, you have AA, and you have Al-Anon. So which one of those would you give up first and consider yourself safe?
That's a good question. If I had to give one up, I guess I'd go with Al-Anon. Stay with my therapist and AA.
Why?
Because in Al-Anon, even though that's focused on codependent issues, I can't do the depth work I can on that issue in an Al-Anon meeting. It's share in a general way for 2 to 3 minutes. So, right? Whereas with my therapist, I have that sacred hour once a week to really go deep.
Okay, thanks.
I have no questions right now.
Just for clarification for me, you mentioned in your opening statement that you had not availed yourself of the support that was available. And then you further talked about you wanted to achieve the highest level of self-awareness. Then when I read, remember to go back to your analyst report, it indicated that support was one of the things that you truly needed, that it would help you in making good decisions, that you could rely on others, and that you hadn't successfully done that in the past. In terms of, you making a statement about support and then the highest level of self-awareness, how does that resonate with what your analysts had to advise?
Well, I concur that I need support.
Well, you're asking to,
Sorry.
let's go back very specifically, to eliminate weekly supervision.
Oh,
If
okay.
you have 3 points where you're at during the week and you're moving, then it seems to me that continuing that would be a support person, because they specifically talk about not using that kind of support.
Yeah, and right, and so my the place where I believe I get the most support on the level that I was weak in is with my therapist, with my supervisor, and that's exactly why I was thinking actually I should reverse what I was asking for, which originally I think I wrote, or I asked elimination of supervision, but upon more reflection I thought, this has been good for me actually, and maybe I could do it once a month instead of not at all, which was what I was originally going to ask for.
So, given your changed family composition, daughters, a husband, Phil, how do you bring in the support to support you at work?
For my family?
Because that's part of your problem in the past has been.
Right.
Yeah, and then now you got a situation that's, well, it was very volatile and got you into trouble. So now you got it. That becomes, to me, a very critical component of your rehabilitation, how to handle that.
Yes. So in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the coping skills that I have learned to take care to be an independent, strong person within my family system they're very abundant, they're very deep-seated, they're very freeing. They keep the paradox of, being loyal to myself primarily while being loving, with somebody else, to somebody else. The spiritual basis of that program is complete freedom. So understanding that not only am I powerless over drugs and alcohol, I'm powerless over people, places, and things. I'm powerless over what he does ultimately. Although there's things I'd love for my family, there's goals I have for myself and my family, I am powerless over what other people do, people, places, and things. And the second I think I'm not, my head is unmanageable and I try to manage it with outside things. So through the program of AA, I've learned how to not do that, which carries over to every aspect of my family, parenting, a 9, a 15, and 8-year-old girls, and everything. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I want to follow up the question about talking about potential harm to clients.
Okay.
So did you discuss this, how your arrest, you're using during employment time, the period, when you were seeing client and stuff under the influence? Did you address, the potential harm when you're under influence to your client with your therapist, or?
Oh, yeah.
What is the insight you got out of it?
What are the insights I got out of it? I guess that's why I wanted to, when the question was first posed, was there harm done, or were my clients affected? And I wanted to say no. Like, that's crazy for me to think that. I know nothing. I know that there was never any malpractice. I know I never did harm, but to be under the influence in a clinical setting and to do therapy and work with patients is, I was out of my mind to think that was okay. It's not okay. I was under the influence, and while thankfully it was a relatively short period of time, there's so many things that could have gone wrong. There's so many things I could have not reflected back or given bad guidance, or I suppose there's an infinite number of things that could have happened. Yeah, it was completely irresponsible of me.
So what did you learn about yourself, when you're under stress, deal with the circumstances just like, your last offense?
Yeah.
What can you do differently this time? Not this time, but I'm thinking about, what can you do differently in order to deal with the same situation? And what can you do in order to prevent the same situation and not causing harm to clients?
First of all, I don't use no matter what as a mantra. Like I said, my focus has to be on my sobriety first. When I'm sober, now that I'm sober again and have been, I'm very responsible. I'm very in tuned. I'm very can't think of the right word, but I guess to simply answer that, it all comes back to me not picking up drugs. That's something that's not a part of my life anymore. I've designed that to be not a part of my life anymore, and that's my number one priority.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Two quick questions. One is, what is your clean and sober date?
January 6, 2011.
And I'm curious, when you were arrested at work, it's a residential center, right? That you work at?
Hmm?
So did the residents see your arrest? Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry. No, they did not.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Wow, meth. How easy is that to get where you live, and how did you get it in? You're in Lompoc now, and was that part of the reason for your move? Was to remove yourself from the easily accessible drugs, or
Right. So my first thought when you asked that is I have no idea where I would get that.
But that's what you were arrested for. So this was something. These were illegal. This was not. This wasn't something that you had a prescription for. That you're okay.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm just wondering, is it still readily accessible where you are or where you are?
No. Not on any level.
And the last your relapse was because your husband brought it in the house, or your boyfriend brought it in the house? Is that
Because
right?
it was in the house. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more board questions? No? Do you have any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have anything else you wish to say to the board before we submit the matter?
No, thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Okay, thank you for appearing with that. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. All right. With that, then, the matter is submitted. The record is closed. So, as I mentioned earlier, the board will now, having completed all of the petitions, will meet in executive session, decide each of the petitions, including yours, and once the final decision has been formulated in writing, then it'll be sent to you at your address of record. All right? Any questions about the process from this point forward?
No.
Okay. Thank you again for appearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're not going to go into closed session. You can go, it's fine. Quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and take agenda item 5. Are there any suggestions for future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda today? Okay, hearing none, we will move into closed session. Thank you very much for coming.